meet here first and then
I sent an email. The club rush is from 11 to 2 on Wednesday. So we need to meet here for a little while before you go over there, just to go over a couple of things, if nothing else, because afterwards, just go home. There's no... Dimitri, have you got it worked out where everybody doesn't have to stay for 3 hours? They can all...
No, it's going to be very simple. We're going to be able to rotate. It's just
Okay.
going to be handouts, and like 8 people go on the desk. So anytime anybody wants to leave, they're able to, because we have a lot of people. And anytime people want to rotate, they could. So we're going to keep it very simple. We're going to keep it very light and fun.
All right, and also, when we do any kind of raffle, which we can do...
We can do a raffle on Wednesday?
No, I'm just saying, as for, like for Valentine's Day, because you were going to tell people about it, right?
Yeah.
You're going to advertise. All right, tell them that we're going to give them a little sheet about doshas, because some rule at the college, so it's not gambling, you have to give them something.
So you have to, okay.
So when they buy a raffle ticket, we have to give them, I'll make copies of the dosha sheet,
Great.
give them a dosha sheet and say, fill this out, and then you'll know what your dosha is, and blah, blah, blah.
So
Yeah.
are we allowed to do 50-50 raffles at all?
What's that mean?
Like when you buy tickets and then we keep half of it and then someone wins the other half?
Well,
We could, but what they're winning is a treatment. They're raffling off a treatment. But yeah, we could do something like that. We could. Usually we don't, but we could. Yeah. So I have a big, huge roll of those tickets, you know, and you tear them off. And don't forget, you should do this at home, or if you in your church or something too. Also, let them know, and we could do another one at another time, you know, just to make some sales here. We might be doing something on South Campus. They called me and they're balking at the price, but so what? You know, we're doing this because that's what you're trying to learn how to do, right? Is promote yourself and make money. All right, what I would recommend you do with your weekly sessions is tape them inside your book. Make a copy, tape it inside your book, and this should be in your portfolio with your manual and all your other paperwork. You really should put this on top, because I'll try to send you an email, but no matter what's going on in class, no matter what, the assignments each week you have to do. So whatever the reading assignment is, I want you to do that reading assignment. Now, I used to make everybody do homework, you know, at the end of the chapter, or give you like 20 questions just to see if you did your homework. But I don't want to do that to you. You got enough to do, but you have to do the reading. You have to keep up. That's the most important thing. And by now, with the anatomy book, you've had those chapters a couple of weeks now. So how many times do you think you should have been reading through that by now after a couple of weeks? How many times? Not once. How many times do you think you really have time to read through there? At least 3 or 4, a couple, 3. You should have read through it 3 or 4 times. Now, when Italia was here, she gave you some really good ideas to help you study. And it sounds like a lot of work to make notes and rewrite your notes and go back and revisit it. But that's how you learn. That's how you learn, okay? Now, did anyone find out why he called this Job's body? Did you read the why? Yeah, but why is this book called Job's Body? It's an anatomy book for massage therapists, but why did he call it Job? He could have called it anything he wanted, right?
Because he was suffering, and you know, all his friends. Well, he really believed in God, and his friends were telling him, you know, don't believe in that God anymore. You know?
Well, what's the moral? The moral of the story. I mean, that's nice, but that's not the reason he called this book.
Himself, like, you know,
You need to know what's going on within your own body before you decide what's going on in your life.
Believe me, it was a completely new way to look at religion too when this was written. Before, there was the all-powerful God who just stomped on you like an ant, and you really didn't have any say-so in it. You know, you had to follow the rules, and you didn't break the rules. But what happened with Job is he said, "Excuse me, I'd like to talk to you, please," to God. No one had ever thought that you could have a personal relationship like that where he would actually listen to you and you had input on what was going on. That's a completely new idea. Completely new idea. So it's a way of getting control of yourself, right? And it kind of answers the question, well, why do bad things happen to good people? Because they do. Now, the old way of looking at things, that should not have happened, right? You followed the rules, you did what he said, you were supposed to be rewarded. And Job, but he wasn't rewarded, he wasn't rewarded at all, right? Up until a certain point, and then he wasn't. So why did bad things happen to that good person? Because they're always going to happen to everybody, right? It's part of the universe. So what is the moral, and the whole point of this book is you have to get control of all that. You're not a passive victim of what's happening. You have to be an active participant and get control. Get control, okay? Doesn't mean you could go out and be mean and murderers and all that kind of stuff, and then you'll be forgiven. That doesn't work that way either. But it's all about that. Now, the first 2 chapters that we looked at in here was about the basic composition. And if you listen to my lectures, it may not sound like it, but what I'm saying when I'm up here came from the book. When I talk to you about tensegrity, is that in there? Yeah. When I talked to you about the composition and how everything was interconnected, it's in there. And I talked to you about stress. That's chapter 10, right? That's chapter 10. And we talked about getting in the flow, being in the zone, using intuition to do our work. That's in the book. So when you read this in the book, in here we'll have a discussion about it and see how it interconnects. But I really don't go far afield. I'm really trying to tell you what's in here. Now, it would be really good, and he's very technical. You know, he is. He's very technical. He's some philosophy major guy, but he's a very well-trained medical person. So it is kind of technical. He goes into great depth about the structure, the molecules, and all that kind of stuff. Because especially for some of you who want to go into the medical side of our profession, you are going to be talking to medical people, doctors, chiropractors, physical therapists, exercise physiologists, maybe athletic trainers, people with 4, 5, 6 years of medical training. And the language they speak is medical. And you can't go in there and say, well, I worked on his shoulder, I rubbed the knot in his right shoulder, now the knot's gone, and he feels better. How many times have you seen a therapist and they talk to you about your knots? They get your knots out. It's like, you know, you turned into cottage cheese because you have a problem now. But you can't talk like that, you know, you can't really talk. Now, to someone you're working on, if you said the word adhesion, you need to kind of explain what an adhesion is. That's the word for knot. But why do they get knots? I mean, why does your body do that? And if I don't know how it got there, I can't possibly know how to get it out or fix it, right? So it's a collaboration between me and the person, and they can't be totally passive in this either. They have to kind of help out, but with their own health care, like, you know, exercise and all that kind of stuff. But it is a collaboration, but we have to understand. And our physics, and I know I've put this up here before, our way of looking at things, the physical sciences are what we use to describe things. How do things work? How does it work? So our physics, that branch of science, describes how things work, and all the other sciences are based on that. Now, in the Western world, it's called reductionism. What does that mean? All right, get your little medical terminology handout out. Every time you read in a book, you look at different terms, I want you to look them up in that handout. That should be with you all the time. Because I really don't expect you to sit down with that handout and start memorizing them We're going to start with the A's, and we're going to memorize, and we're going to go through to the Z's. It's really kind of hard to do that. And that's a kind of daunting challenge, right? I said, by the end of the term, you got to memorize all those elements. No. You got to take little bites, okay? Little bites of knowledge, little ones, but on a daily basis. You think you're going to sit down the night before your midterm and cram? Good luck. I'd recommend you drink lots of coffee. And you might make it through that test, but the next day you don't remember crap because you didn't absorb it. You didn't absorb it, right? So every day, little bites, little bites. And don't fall behind. You know, don't fall behind. It's really, really difficult to catch up if you do. Now, anybody out there is having a problem, you better be right here in my face. Help me. Help me. Because I'm not going to come to you. You're an adult. You don't want my help? Okay. You flunk out? Okay, that was your choice, right? You chose to do that. Because we got tons of stuff here to help you. There's no reason why you have that problem. And I don't want to see you struggling. You don't need... Most people, all it takes is more time. They need to understand it. It's just going to take them a little more time than everyone else. And that's okay. That's okay. You know, I told you I took algebra 5 times. But I got it on the 5th pass. And if I hadn't done it, I wouldn't have been able to go forward with my education, right? Because that was required. So sometimes you got to do what's required, but please let me help you, please, okay? We can have study groups after class, before class. Dimitri's being really diligent about that. The anatomy part is also the learning resource, what's it called? ACS now. And a lot of that you can do online now with them. A lot of it's online too, so please understand that you don't need to struggle, and you don't need to sit there and say, I don't understand this at all. What's going on? I have no idea. Let me know, all right? And this book is very technical. He's very in-depth on what he talks about. So if it's a little complicated for you, then we need to talk about that. And what I would recommend you do is make an outline. The handout, excuse me guys, you have to stop talking, please. Make an outline like I did for the body. We're up to tissue, so I did one with the elemental and the molecular and the cells and the tissues. And I gave that to you in a Word document form, which means you can add to it, right? You can add more information to that. You can alter it, whatever you want to do. But you need to start doing that, okay? Because we can't look at each individual part. Because what are we doing? We're using our hands to touch someone. And we can't just touch one tissue or have one response. We have to look at the body as a whole and try to help them with their whole. And that's not just the physical body too, is it? What are you really? Aren't you really 3 parts? Aren't you a trilogy? So what are the 3 parts that is you? Body, mind, and spirit. So I've got a physical, and that's all this really wants to look at. I could say chemical. And a wave or energy or spirit. And here it's our soul. You could say it's your soul too, but you're looking at that kind of stuff. So I can't just look at this, right? And I certainly can't just look at this without looking at that. Because what does your book say about this part of your triangle? It's really in control, isn't it, of these 2 parts. Even the part that we think that these guys would say is autonomic. The part in chapter 10 about the nervous system, he does get into a lot of detail. I don't expect you to memorize that and know the autonomic and all that kind of, because we're going to go back over that. Just gives you an overview of how it all fits together. And he talks about hormones and the hormones and all that kind of stuff. And that's another system. So just to get a gist of why is that important, because this is what we're looking at right now, okay? I want you to have an understanding of it, but we're going to go, when we go into those systems, we'll go more into it. So we're going to do the nervous system next term, a little bit now, but most of it next term. So I don't, don't have to memorize that. And just because right now what we're talking about is this, right? Reductionism says the world and the universe is like a clock. It's like, it has a very mechanical structure, right? So if I take it apart, I'll know how it works. But what happens when you reassemble that clock, that body? You look at the parts, but what happens when it's a unit?
One affects the other.
It's something called a synergy. Who remembers what that word is in your book?
It works when the parts don't add up to the soul.
Good way to say it is it's more than the sum of its parts, right? More than the sum of its parts. And I gave you an analogy of like the mouse trap. The little ball goes down and hits this bar, and that bar hits that, and all these different things start happening as it goes along. And it has to go along and hit this bar, and suddenly lights light up over here, all these other things happen, because it's acting as a unit. It's acting as a unit, okay? So if a word ends in ISM, what does that mean? Nazism, communism, reductionism. Look it up. You got a list of things? Look it up. For heaven's sakes, you got to, huh?
It's a process or
It's a process or a condition. Process or a condition, right? What is that telling you? That means it's breaking something down, right? Taking it apart. If you reduce something, what did you do? You separated it, brought it down to a simpler level, and that's what we do. We take the body apart. So this is why we use this word for the physical side. We have to open the door. We're dying in here. I'm sorry. I can't breathe. I hope it won't be that loud, but please just talk. They need to give me a fan or something. Come on. I know, it's awful, isn't it? So we don't say morphology and physiology, which is more accurate. You're studying, when you study, they say anatomy. Because that tells you everything right there about this. Because what does this word mean? It ends in this. What's that telling you? Look up that, O-M-Y. What's that?
like cuts.
To cut into. And this, on the beginning of a word, means after you cut the body up. That word is telling you it's all based on cadavers. Cadaver work. Can you really learn about the human body from a dead human body? I don't think so. It's dead. And you can sew that dead body back up after you cut it apart, but you still don't have a whole human being, do you? You don't. So this really doesn't work. I mean, it has really good, but not really when you're looking at a human being. And we don't work on cadavers. They would never appreciate a massage. They really, it won't do much for them, okay? They're still dead. So I prefer the term morphology because I really don't want to look at a dead person to learn about how the body works. So O-M-Y and Anna on the beginning, so now we need to start putting this together. So as you're reading, you come across a word, look it up. Look it up and see what the parts of the word mean and what does that word mean. And that's how you need to learn this, is a little bit every day, looking at what you're studying. You know, when you got time, sit down and go through the whole thing. Start with the A's, go all the way through, and then come back and go back. But you got to start picking up on it as you use it, okay? And some we already know because we already recognize them. You know hyper, you know hypo, because you've been using them a lot, right? If it ends in O-L-O-G-Y, you know it's the study of, okay? Path, you already know what like pathology means, the study of disease, okay? And then start picking up on all the other words. But as you learn this, I want you to keep that medical term handout handy and just look stuff up as you're reading, okay? Because a lot of it you've never seen before. A lot of it you have. But we're going to look at the person like this. So this book is going to show you the body like that. I could have made you buy the nursing A&P book, you know. But that nursing A&P book will not tell you about tensegrity. It will not tell you about how stress affects the body and the mind and the spirit. That focus is not there. It'll describe the tissues and it'll tell you about connective tissue, but it won't tell you how it's completely interconnected from inside the cell all the way up to your hair follicle. It's one sheet, and it won't tell you about the piezoelectric properties that the body has either, because that's not their focus. That's our focus. And when we studied the skin, when we looked at that chapter for the skin, we looked at how important touch is, right? That if you don't have touch, you'll die. You can die from it. And what's that called? Touch deprivation. So look up the parts to deprivation in your list. What does that mean? If I deprive you of something. And it's as necessary as eating food and drinking water. We're social mammals. Social mammals exist in groups, herds or whatever. You gotta stay together. That root chakra, you cannot be healthy or happy if you feel you're all alone. If I have to go through this life alone, that goes totally against everything about me as a social mammal. My core of my being. I'm not designed to be, I won't survive. For like in the wild, maybe 2 days, you know, you're just not going to make it if you're by yourself. It has to be as a group. It has to be as a group. So that touch is really, really, it's the first sense that you develop as a fetus, and it's the last sense that you have. It's the last one to go. Last one to go. So it's pretty darn important. And in the book he tells you that they've done experiments where on a 6-week-old embryo, they stroked the upper lip and the baby responded. I mean, he pulled away. So it's a big part of what we do. Gosh, I never can remember his first name, but Dr. Montague wrote a book called The Importance of Touch. And a lot of the research that we read about in here was from the studies and stuff that they did. So they did it on animals and they also did it on people. And some of the places, like at the orphanages, you know, where all the babies were fed, their diapers were changed, but there was no interaction. Did they survive? No. And if they do, their growth is stunted. They don't have enough growth hormone. They got a special word for it, but, you know, they don't grow the way they should. A lot of them are retarded mentally, you know, just because of touch. Just because of touch. And it's something you need throughout your life. So as you grow and mature, if you don't get the touch that you need in the right ways, then you're going to try to substitute something for that. You know, you'll overeat, you'll do all these other addictive behaviors, and what you're really trying to do is satisfy your need for touch. That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. Now, the skin, the little diagram, and it's black and white drawings, and the pictures are in black and white. Sorry, they're pretty accurate, so you can still learn from them that are in here. So with the skin, well, first of all, let's do a review. Tell me how many types of tissues you have. What are they?
Nervous.
Look up that, and look up that.
I'm having a hard time navigating through this thing.
They're what?
This.
It should be alphabetical.
It is, but there's just so many different.
Start page 811.
811?
Yeah, it's put together a little different. I just got it from a couple of different sources. You can always go online and just, find your own
Yeah.
and download it if you want. I just didn't want you to have to go buy a book and have a resource that has all of them, So flip back and forth, it's all in there. But like lateral and medial, those words end in AL. So that suffix means, and it's going to mean that, so you're going to see it stuck on the end of a lot of words. It means pertaining to, okay? And theal, or thelia, God knows how that got, anyway. But what we use it for is for covering or sheet, okay? And epi, something that's over or above, right? It's over or above. So you see a word that, I know that they were talking about like that type of tissue, but why did they use that particular word? What are those parts telling me? Why is it that word? Okay. And that pretty much tells you what it is, because it doesn't have anything to add to it or change it. And 3, muscle. And what is the little thing for muscle? M-U-S-C. Now, why is that there? What does your handout say about that? What's that? It's called a connecting vowel. So how many vowels are you got? You got A, E, I, O, U, right? Now, some words are compound words. There's more than just one root to it. And they'll combine them a little different, but it's most of the time it's an O. Most of the time it is. So I see something that starts with M-Y. I know they're talking about muscle, right? I know that. Or it starts like this. What does that mean? That means flesh. And when I look at you, I see your flesh, but what I'm really looking at is your muscles. That's what I think of. So it'll be sarco this and sarco that. But that word means flesh. But this word relates to your muscle system. It relates to your muscle system. Who remembers what this one meant?
Body.
It means body. And sometimes it'll be combined with something and it'll be spelled like that. And this one you're going to see a lot in your nervous system. So start using that medical terminology handout and start trying to learn your words, okay? Kind of do it like the Reader's Digest, a word a week or a word a day or whatever it is. But you should be picking it up. And then the more you look at it, the more you recognize. You pretty much are going to recognize that now, right? Know what it is. If it begins with an A or an A-N, what's that telling me? That's without. So whatever comes after that, that's what you don't have. So something we're aseptic, what does that mean? It's germ-free. It's clean, right? So if I develop sepsis, what do you think I've got? Pretty nasty infection, right, of your blood. So as we go through the body, this is what I want you to do. Now, I am going to give you a list of pathology terms. That does not mean you shouldn't look at pathology terms. So when we look at the nervous system, I'll give you like 20. Of the ones that are common, the ones that you're probably going to run into in your work. And then there's other things that are statistical that will probably turn up on your test. Like, what is the leading cause of death in America? What disease kills more people than any other one? Yeah. Stuff like that. That's what you need to know, right? What you need to know. Oh, I did. I was going to get to that because we're going to talk about that right now. So the big bad one that we are working with the most, okay, muscles, yeah, but there's a lot more connective tissue than there is muscle tissue. And the muscle tissue really doesn't do anything unless the nervous system tells it to do something. But it can only do something that the connective tissue allows it to do. In fact, nothing can take place that the connective tissue doesn't allow to take place, right? In one way or another. There's not one cell in your body that does not touch connective tissue. If it's a connective tissue cell, it's touching another connective tissue. But everything. So it's everywhere, right? It's everywhere. How many types of connective tissue do you have? And hopefully you read your outline I gave you. We did do it in class, so hopefully you got a chance to go back. So first we have to classify it. And I need to make a correction on the study guide I gave you for your midterm, where it's talking about connective tissue. I need to add one type in there, and I told you to do that, right, in class? Yeah, add irregular to it. But to study an organism, you have to know how it's organized. So you can take this book. Now I'll do one chapter for you. I'm going to do an outline of one chapter for you. But this is what I'd like for you to do in here, to organize it. I like outlines, I like graphs and all that. It just makes it easier for me to see. And I gave you a whole series of frameworks and graphs for all the systems, which I'll make a copy for you. It's easier for me to see it. But you know, everybody's different. That's why I try to give you a variety. Everybody's different. And you have the ability to go on and look it up yourself and find, oh, that graph I can understand that one, or this picture really speaks to me, or the way this guy describes it, I understand that. Okay. Unfortunately, there aren't that many books that are written like this for us. What most massage therapy people do is they just adopt a regular anatomy book, which is not a good idea, because what we're doing is totally different. But and I think there's someone else that's going to come out with something, and she's from India. She's a doctor, an Indian doctor, which I'm pretty sure her book's going to be pretty good. So the connective tissue is surrounded by everything. So somebody tell me, like when we did the regions, we had the really big section, that the whole first half of your body, and then we got more specific. So somebody tell me give me a definition of connective tissue. First of all, you got to know what it is. So what is it? And you can look on your handout I gave you. You can look it up. What's it described? I like to just say CT. You should know what I mean when I talk about CT. So when we study this, tissues and systems, the first thing you got to know is what's the definition, what's it doing, right? What are the components of it? So when I look at something, a system or an organ, first of all, I got to know what are the cells, because that's what's making up that structure, right? What are the cells? A nervous system cell, a nervous cell is going to look totally different than a connective tissue cell. Why? Why are they so different? This is a 100 million question. You get this right, you get like maybe an A. Why can't they all be the same? There you go. She gets 10 points. It's because of the function that little cell has to do. It's got to work a certain way that it has to be able to do that, right? So the structure's going to change. Now, what do we call that process where things change? Very good. It's called differentiation. You got a little basic model cell, and what do we call the basic model cell? Yep, a basic model cell. Very good. It's called a stem cell. That's what you start out with, right? And then based on what it's got to do, it's going to change. And that change we call differentiation. So my basic stem cell can become an epithelial cell. It can become a connective tissue cell. It can become a muscle system cell and a nervous system cell. It can't do anything than that, because that's the only 4 types we got. Now, it can be very specialized within that category, right? So this guy right here is the one you got the most different types of. If it's everywhere in your body, then you got to have a different kind, because it's doing different things all over the place, right? So you got a lot of these, categorize them. So if I started out with top of my outline, the first thing I'm going to do is do the biggest division possible. So what are the two main ways we divide this up? It's in your house. No, that's a whole different tissue, honey. We're talking about connective tissue. Look at your handout that I gave you. That's way down the line. I want the first two main ones. Like with the body we did, well, first it was posterior or anterior, right? Then it was axial and appendicular. So what are the first two things that you're going to do? Look at your handout. It's right on the top. Not that. The one that I gave you for tissues. It's starts off with the elemental composition, the molecular composition. Other than that, you're going to have to look it up in your book, but you should be able to pick that out. All right. The first kind is embryonic, and we're not really going to be concerned about that. So when the baby's still in the womb, it's a special kind of connective tissue that's really soft and mushy and rubbery, right? So embryonic, which we're not going to care about. And then what would this be? Mature. It's mature. So we're going to look at the mature, and we're going to divide that down so we understand our connective tissue. And then we'll talk about that chapter. So definition of connective tissue is well, what does connective mean? Pretty straightforward, right? It connects stuff. That's its job. It connects stuff. It supports everything. It holds everything together. So we're looking at form and function, right? That's what we're studying, morphology and physiology. So first I have to be able to describe the form, and then I have to be able to describe the function. Whenever you study anything in the book, in the body, any of the systems, those are the two things you have to be able to answer. What is it, the form, and what's it doing? Form and function. You could say that instead of A and P, couldn't you? You would be more correct if you said form and function. And the Latin way to say that would be morphology and physiology. Okay. So this is the stuff that supports, binds, does all that kind of work. Connective. Okay. Two main ways we're going to break it down is embryonic, and I don't really care about embryonic. But now we're looking at mature. So tell me where I go from here. And in the last lecture, we even put the cell types up there for the nervous system. Remember? Broke it all down. All right. On my little outline, the next largest section under mature is going to be, it's called proper and specialized. Now, I can break this down further, right? And I can break that down further. I can be more specific under that heading, within that category, okay? And under proper, what am I going to put?
Loose and dense.
Very good. Loose and dense. Now, I can break this down further, right?
Yes.
I can break that down further. All right, over here, what's going to be under specialized?
Cartilage.
Cartilage. Bone and blood. Now, each of those types is connective tissue. Looks different, doing different things, but they are all a form of connective tissue. All right, let's start with loose. How many types of loose do you have? I got 3. And what are they? Areolar. Adipose. And reticular, R-E-T-I-C-U-L-A-R. Okay. Now this means net-like. If I use the word reticular, I'm talking about something that acts like a network or a net. So my palmar retinaculum, the palmar part tells me it's going to be here, right? And like a membrane or something, it's a sheet. And if it's a palmar retinaculum, I know it's acting like a net. If you look back there on your muscle chart, if you look at the wrists, you see that band that's holding everything else down. They bind everything, like you threw a net over them, keeping them all in place, holding them together. You have them on your feet too, a little band down there. And it's called a reticulum. How about my endoplasmic reticulum? Why is it called that? Because it's a little network. It's a little channel of all these little tubey things cooked together, right? So I've got three kinds of loose. Most of your connective tissue is areolar, because that's like the packing material of your whole body, kind of packing everything in. And then under your skin, you got a lot of this. What's that? That's fat cells. That's fat tissue. You got a lot of that, right? It has a very important job. It helps regulate our body temperature. It kind of keeps us from getting ripped and torn when we fall down. We just bounce because we got fat there. And based on your hormones, which we'll study in which system has hormones? Endocrine. We'll look at why a man's fat is different than a woman's fat. You know, guys don't get cellulite. Don't you hate them? They don't get cellulite because their fat is composed differently. What all cellulite is sick fat. It's got a disease. It has lymphedema. Fluids have come into the tissue and broken up the collagen fibers in the little cells, and they're like floating around on all this fluid, and the body tries to kind of hang on to all that stuff, so it wraps it up in a cocoon of collagen fibers. So when I look at my skin and I see the orange peel, look, that's just a little bundle of fat cells being surrounded by collagen. And if you read your book, you know how strong collagen is. How strong is collagen? Stronger than steel. It's extremely strong. So it's really hard to break it up, right, once it gets on there. And we can buy all these products, and we just spend a lot of money and time trying to get rid of our cellulite, right? And that's just sick adipose. So ours is really loose. Our cells look like this. Lots of fluid can get in there and cause a problem, right? Guys, yours looks like this. Yeah, much tighter. So it's not a problem for you, but it is for us. But that's just because of the way it's structured. But that's your loose. And this is more of a fine network type of tissue, and that's exactly why it's called that, right? All right, so that's the loose. How about the dense? You got three loose. How about dense? There's regular. There's irregular. And we have another kind of reticular connective tissue. So when I say that, I have to say loose reticular or dense reticular to define the two. There's a difference, right? Now, what they're talking about here is when they say regular, who read their book? Who read that handout? Tell me what it means. And that's what we're going to look at in chapter 2. We're going to go over that, chapter 3, about why you get adhesions, what's happening. On a molecular level, you need to understand what's happening. The collagen fibers are organized. They're parallel to each other. And they have a little kink in them like this. And what's happening is it's only being pulled in one direction. Okay, only in one direction. So tendons and ligaments are regular. And remember, we even talked about the little nerve ending that's here. What's that little nerve ending there? What's it called? Those are spindle cells. They're proprioceptors, okay? And these strips of collagens are usually in the belly of the muscle. So there you've got another way, and this is, I'm getting ahead of myself, but inside there, it only is in one particular spot, and we call that intrafusal. And then you got other parts that are, all right, here's another thing that you need to understand. I'm sure that you've seen these before. What would be the difference? When would I use that, this prefix and this one? What would be the...
Intra is inside one body, and the inter is connected.
Is between the two, right? So if I say intrafusal, I'm talking about something that's in the belly, right? If I said interfusal, it's going to be between them. It's not inside it. So there's a prefix you need to understand, because you'll see that. You'll see those terms being used quite a bit. In the body, they'll talk about a cell and then all the crap around it, right? So this is the regular. This only gets pulled in one direction. And it is very strong. It's stronger than steel. So where do you think there's going to be a problem if you're overstraining that muscle? It's not going to be the tendon that tears first, is it? It's pretty much going to stay okay. So it's either going to pull loose from the bone, where it's attaching, right? Or where it's connecting to other tissues that do stretch and move. So irregular is going to be the opposite to that, isn't it? It can get pulled in any direction. I can pull on my skin up and down, sideways. I can pinch it. I can do that, and it will resist that. It will respond, and it'll spring back. It's got elasticity to it, right? So that's not a tendon. A tendon doesn't have force applied in all different directions. It's only in one, and the same thing for a ligament. But other places, I need that stretchability. I need that strength, but from different directions. And then once again, this is a little different. It's a different type of connective tissue, but it's a net-like grouping of the tissues. But they're denser. Oops, I don't have my right thing. Most books don't even mention that, because it's only like a little bit, so it doesn't really form a sheet. All right, so that's this over here, right? This is called proper connective tissue, and this is more of what we're going to work on, right? We do affect this, we do, but we mainly are working on muscles, which are tendons and ligaments, right? And all the connective tissue that wraps it all up. So that's mainly what we look at. Then this cartilage, what's the name of the cell? If I'm looking at cartilage, it's going to use one root word element that's going to tell you that. Oh, I forgot that. Over here, what do you think the word's going to be for the connective tissue stuff? Fascia, right? I always think of a gold member. When the Dutch guys always say, my fascia, your fascia. This is the word we're going to use for all of this when we talk about connective tissue. Fascia. And then when it does get specialized, we're going to have a name for that particular kind of cell. All right. These guys here, and in that handout I gave you, there's some that don't move and there's some that do. So you got fixed and you've got wandering ones. But the one that's really composing all of this is called a fibroblast. So you need to look that up. If a word ends in B-L-A-S-T, what does that mean? And fibro, all of this is going to be fiber this and fiber that. So fibro is the word you'd use for fascia.
Embryonic, immature.
If cells end in blast and not cyte, that means they're still immature and they can still create other cells or other products, right? So your little fibroblast is making your tissue cells, and what is the other thing that makes this look different wherever you go? You can classify all this, but there's something about this that's more important than the cell. What's it called?
Matrix.
Very good. Very important word. So in this context, what's the definition of that?
The stuff that's surrounding it.
It's the little environment the little cell lives in. And in connective tissue, that environment is called the matrix. And that's made up of two different structures, or two different parts. What are they? What makes up your matrix? And it's what makes blood look like blood and bone look like bone. Well, one thing is the collagen fibers, which is what you just studied for a couple of weeks on connective tissue chapter. It's all about the collagen fibers, isn't it? You get an adhesion, it's a problem with the collagen fibers. You age, you dry out, it's a problem with the collagen fibers. It's a problem with that. So the number one thing is the fibers, all right? They're all proteins, but they have a little different shape because they're doing different things, but the main one is collagen. And most of your body is collagen, right? Like 90% collagen. Then you got what? What's the other two? Little fibers floating around in there. Collagen is the main one. What's the other two? You got your hand out?
Hyaline?
Hyaline is a type of cartilage, but not in the, that's,
Oh, blood?
huh? Very good. Elastic. And there's little ones called reticular as well. And it's all about what they're doing. So you can imagine the difference between collagen and elastic. Well, the word elastic tells you what? It will stretch, right? It's going to stretch. And basically the reticular is just a little shorter, collagen's a little different one. So when all those little fibers fill up the space, they make it more net-like, right? They make it very strong because this is where the strength and the rigidity comes from for your body. And then the elastic is just exactly what it does stretch. Collagen will not, right? But the elastic does. It gives. It has a give to it.
I'm sorry, you said the fibroblasts, are they a part of the matrix or no?
They're what create the matrix. They're making it. And we did this the other day on the board. I said they're like little spiders. They crawl around like a spider, and they produce the collagen fibers. You know, that would be the endoplasmic reticulum, right? So in a spider, they got little endoplasmic reticulums that they're making spider web for. Because what's a spider web? Collagen fibers. That's what it is. It's collagen fibers. Okay? And something else. So these are the fibers floating around in what? What are they floating around in? The matrix has two parts. It has the fibery stuff, and it has the liquid part. And what's the liquid part called? In this tissue, in connective tissue, what are we going to call it? Ground substance. Does that sound familiar? Okay, we talked about that, right? And we're not talking about the cell now. We're talking about the matrix. This is what's all around that little cell, sitting there minding his own business, spinning out from his endoplasmic reticulum this and the ground substance. Now, in one place it may be really thin and really watery, and maybe just a few fibers floating around in it called blood, right? Or it's got tons of this stuff and very little ground substance. In other places, like in cartilage, it's a different balance between the two, right? That's what gives it its structure. So what gives it its structure is the matrix. It's the matrix. What did he say in the book about the matrix? You probably thought your skeletal system was what holds you up, right? It doesn't. Your feet don't even really have to touch the floor, do they? What's really holding you up? It's very, very strong. Think of it like a balloon, like you're a water balloon. He uses this analogy in the book, right? The collagen is the balloon, and you're almost all water. What's your percentage of water? What percent water are you? Around 70, more when you're a baby, right? So you're pretty much just a water bag. That's all you are. And what kind of water? Seawater. You're only like a 0.02% difference than seawater, pretty much is what you are. But how you get your form and your shape and your ability to stand upright, because if I just threw a water bottle on the floor, it's going to pancake out, right? But you don't pancake out. How are you standing up and walking around? And being able to bend at the knees. How does that happen? Well, all of your collagen, all of your fascia, twist, like you take a balloon, the guy at the fair, and he makes a little poodle out of it, right? Because he twisted it up here and he twisted it up there, and he separated the air into little compartments. Well, that's what your matrix does. That's what your collagen does. Very strong. So, can you compress water? If you read that chapter, you can answer this question. Can you compress water? No, you cannot. So if I compartmentalize all that stuff, I can't really compress it. It's going to stay where it's at. It's going to stay rigid. It's going to stay full. So the collagen is what binds everything off in all its little different areas. But because it's bound off so many of them, you have something now called what? Hydrostatic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure. So other books will probably tell you, well, what holds you up in your support is your skeleton. It absolutely is not. Based on an integrity system, which is what your body is, what are the bones doing? They're acting as levers. Some of you who have had anatomy before, what's the lever? When the bone acts like a lever, what does that mean?
Supporting the movement.
It allows you to use less force to move something, right? So if I had to pry a big rock out of the ground, I'm not going to try to push it out of the way. I'm going to go get a big metal crowbar and lever the darn thing up. Because now, 10 pounds can move 100 pounds. Levers, that's what your bones are for. If you didn't have them, you would be an octopus. He gets around pretty good, but he's in the water. But I mean, you could ooze your way around. But it's going to take a lot of effort to do it, isn't it? So your body very cleverly used its connective tissue to form a structure that could act as a lever to allow you to use less force and move more mass. Who came up with all this? No. Long time ago. Back with the Greek. The Greek people kind of started everything. They were the first ones to kind of, God, I'd like to talk to you. They started thinking for themselves, right? Archimedes. Remember Archimedes? He was the one who discovered hydrostatic pressure. He discovered buoyancy. It's an interesting. You ever heard the story about how he came up with this? It's so cute. And he was old. He was like in his 60s. But he was working on something else. I forget what it was. Somebody wanted him to do something, and he couldn't figure it out. He was trying to figure out how to do it. And he was being a nuisance to the whole family. So finally his wife or somebody said, please leave us alone. Stop talking. Go take a bath. Just get out of here. You haven't bathed in 3 days. You've been in your room. We're all going nuts. And when he went in and they drew the bath, and he gets into the bathtub and he watches the water come up.
That's the thing he was trying to figure out was Archimedes' principle.
That's how he found it out, yeah.
Trying to figure out the density.
Yeah, somebody had given, he had a problem he was trying to solve. Because back then, like, most of what you had to do was for warfare, so he was trying to figure out something for the ships or whatever. And he couldn't figure it out until he got into the bathtub, and all he did was watch the water level come up. And he said, "Eureka!" And don't we still say that? And he was so excited, he didn't get dressed, he just jumped out of the bathtub and ran across town nude, yelling, "Eureka, Eureka! I figured it out." So we call it Archimedes' principle. But he's the one who, and he said, "You give me a lever big enough and I can move the world." And he's right. With my little, like, 30 pounds, if I could do it. So that's what your skeletal system is really doing. It's acting as a lever system. It's not your support. Your collagen, your fascia, is what's holding you up by making little water compartments all through your body. And bones make it easy to move. You don't take it much worse. But it's not holding you up. And what's holding the bones in place? Why did my disc slip? The muscles, right? The muscles. So we can actually change someone's posture and the way their body functions with gently pulling on the muscles. That's what we do. Chiropractors will do what instead? They're going to jerk it really hard and fast to put it back in alignment, which means you just ripped all the ligaments, you know. Anyway, so it's not a good way to do it. And we can show people with actual research that our way is better. If you need to work on your connective tissue, what we do is better.
What if we did like chiropractic and then?
But most of them they do both. They have a massage therapist there too.
So would that be good to like have the body strength and then work on it?
All right, we could talk about that more in depth, but for most people, most doctors, it's a matter of making money and having as many people come through the office as possible. So they're set up to have maybe 3 or 4 services. They come in and they get the ultrasound and that, and they get a massage, and they exercise, and they see the doctor. Now, what order does that happen? It's usually just what the personnel you got working that day, who can do what, and sometimes it'll be the exercise that's first. But technically, it should be done one way for everybody to be the best benefit, right? But it doesn't always work out that way. So, but they do all of those services, you know. And back in the day, we only did maybe 4. Now, the people that run the clinic say, charge as many units as you possibly can. We need the money. Yeah. And this one guy that I worked for, this PT, he would have a contest, you know, to see who billed the most. Kind of like lawyers, you know, how many billable hours or minutes did you get to charge to the firm? And that's, yeah. It's, you know, I did it for a long time, but it's stuff like that. That's why I don't do it still. It's a big money game, and a lot of it's not ethical. You either play along or you don't, and everybody has to play the game because you got to get paid by the insurance company. You got reimbursed, and you play the game that they set the rules for. So it wasn't the medical profession. So along with these little fiber guys floating around, which is going to make it different, how many do you have? How thick is it? Is it more reticular? Is it more elastic? Is it more collagen? Okay, but what they're floating in is something called ground substance. See, everything you can start out being very general, but you can then become very specific. But when you learn all this, you need to know how it all goes together. So over here, floating around, every cell is floating around in their little juice. And it's going to have ground substance and it's going to have fibers. Those are the 2 parts that make up your matrix. And where does that come from? Who's making it? The fibroblasts. They're creating it. They're creating both of those parts to your matrix. The water's there, they just mix it all up. So the ground substance can have it's usually a glycoprotein, but other things are floating around in there, and it can make it really, really solid, hard like plastic, or really, really soft, right? Really soft, just according to where it's at. But this is everywhere, because the cells that's what they're sitting in. So the big difference between the epithelial tissue that we looked at and the connective tissue is the number of cells. Because remember when we did epithelial, what did it look like? I drew this on the board for you. It looks like paving stones, right? They are jammed right up against each other. Very little matrix, very little, just enough to kind of glue them. It's like grouting lines, that's about it. But in this tissue, it's going to be just like this. Here's some cells, kind of floating around. How many fibers are there? Not too many, not too many. So, loose, dense, and what was the word for this? Cartilage, chondro. So these basic word elements I want you to recognize because it's always going to mean the same thing. What would I look for to know it's bone? Os, O-S, or osseo, or osteo. Blood, heme, H-E-M-E. So a cell here would be called a, what's it called? Osteocyte. Here, there's special ones, right? Different kinds. Now, all the old books used to call them corpuscles. Now they're called what?
Leukocytes for white blood cells.
Formed elements. They're called formed elements. And you got very special ones in the blood. You've got the red blood cells, and what are they doing? They're picking up, taking oxygen out to the cells and bringing what back? What is it? CO2, right? The waste product from respiration is CO2. So it takes that out, and when it's taken it out, it's nice and red. Drops it off, picks up the CO2. Now what color is it? Blue. You see a picture, a diagram of the body? They always have arteries red. What color are the veins? They're blue. They're blue. Okay? So that's what it's doing. What about the white blood cells? And what would we say there? Red blood cells, the Latin for red is what? Erythro. I see that. I know they're talking about the color red. So an erythrocyte is a red blood cell. What's the word for white? Leuco. So I got leukocytes. Those are the white blood cells, right? Then the little ones that break apart and make the fibers for the platelets, they're called what? Who knows what that cell is? Thrombocytes. So that's in your blood, okay? These are called osteocytes, right? Now, if it's still making the tissue, so in here, if it were somewhere else, I'd call it a fibroblast. But in here, what am I going to call it? An osteoblast. Okay? And here it would be a chondrocyte. Okay? Now, like everything else, you've got a variety. So here you got a variety. They're not all the same. Here you got a variety. There's two kinds of bone tissue. Two kinds. And you got one type of blood, the plasma, but you got all these different cells floating around in it that's doing different things. So you start general. The whole thing is connective tissue. Then the two major kinds is the embryonic before you're born and the proper. And we're not going to look at the embryonic because we don't work on infant fetuses. And under the proper, you got what? You got proper and specialized. Okay, proper and specialized. The proper is what kind? Loose and dense. Now, within those two headings, I can break it down and be more specific. And there's three kinds of loose and three kinds of dense, right? Specialized, I can look at cartilage for the whole thing. Or I can be more specific and say hyaline, fibrocartilage, and reticular. Bone, I can say dense or compact. And I can say spongy or cancellous, right? Got two kinds. And blood, you can define it according to the cells that are in there, the formed elements, either red blood cells, white blood cells, or thrombocytes, which break up immediately. So we just say platelets. We say platelets, right? So you need to be able to outline this. You need to put the whole thing up there and then break it down. Where does this structure fit into that organized outline? Where does it fit? Some things don't fit exactly, but that's how you're going to do it. And I want you to do this every system we go through. We're going to revisit the integument. We're going to get more in depth with that. And you're going to say, here it is. How do I break it down? What's the next structure? I want to get more specific. Does that break down anymore, or is that it? And you're going to know the cells in that system and the tissues that are in that system. So morphology, that's how you're going to study the body. That's how you're going to look at all this stuff, okay? You got to know the form, and then you got to know, well, why is it formed that way? What's happening? It's doing something to make it form like that. What's its job? What's its job? And connective tissue's job is pretty much everything, isn't it? Pretty much everything. First job is support. It's going to hold you up because it makes all those little compartments to hold the water in, to give you the shape that you have, but also to give you your strength, your resilience, your ability to bounce back, and all that kind of stuff. And that is all based on this word right here. Which most people credit Buckminster Fuller for coining, but there was actually a doctor that talked about the human body and used that term more than him, but he kind of gets the credit for it. And that's really a combination of two words. What are the two words? Big part of your chapter, right? Tension and integrity. This is how my body is structured. This is how it's all held together. All that connective tissue, the whole framework, everything, the bones as levers. Do you remember this little drawing? Right? How does my little house stand up? Well, the pole's not doing it. What's holding the pole up?
Tension from those rods.
The connective tissue that is holding that structure together. So if something happens in one part of the body and it shortens up, what happens to everything on the other side? Yeah, if this side gets closer, this side has to get further away to keep the balance, right? And it's so good at it. You've seen people like this, old people, they look like a pretzel. The shoulder's way down here, and they're still walking, aren't they? What your body does is try to keep your eyes level with the horizon. And it'll start making you do all this craziness just so your eyes stay level with the horizon. But that's connective tissue. Now in the book he showed a picture of what? What did he show a picture of to illustrate this? Not my little tent. What did he use? Say it. A sweater. Remember the picture of the sweater? And what happens when you pull a little hook in one little corner? What happened to the rest of the sweater? It responded to that stress and that strain, didn't it? And the whole weave got crooked. And the reason we use a sweater as an analogy, because it's a very great analogy, because your connective tissue is one continuous strand. How do you knit a sweater? It's one string of yarn, isn't it? But look what you created with it, with that one string of yarn. This beautiful structure. Now, whoever sat down and thought up that pattern that you do 3 here and 1 here and 3 here, and then it comes out with a little I mean, that must have taken thousands of years of sitting there with a yarn to figure that out. But somewhere along the line, there's a pattern to what you're doing, right? That you can't see until you create the item. So every little thing your fascia system does, all that string stuff does, is to create a unit that can stand up, can walk around and stand up. So the design, the template is in there somewhere, right, for that. But you have to adjust to that. You have to adjust to it. And this is all in your book. I'm not doing or saying anything that's not part of that chapter to kind of illustrate what he's talking about. Now, look at I forget which page it is. He's got some pictures of the actual collagen fibers, to what they look like. What structure is the collagen based on? And this is a really good picture of the dense connective. You know, it's black and white, but there's good contrast there. You can see the fibers and what they look like. You can. Uh, 71, 72, and 73. And if you want, you can do like I did. I just highlighted the one part that he's talking about. It's a different color so I can see it, but that dotted line, okay? So what it is molecules that are designed into, what do we call that shape? What is that shape you're looking at? It's a double helix. Helix is a twisted shape. For the same reason that rope isn't just one bundle of strands that you hold on to, they're braided, aren't they? What does that do to the strength to braid them? Much, much, much higher strength, right? Much, much higher strength. So it's done like that for a reason, okay? Collagen fibril. It requires a load 10,000 times its own weight to stretch it. Now that's pretty darn strong. But these little guys are lined up in a helix and then they're bound together with something called a hydrogen bond. Page 73. A hydrogen bond is what kind of bond? Because we looked at the three kinds of bonds. Which one is that? You've done this before. I would study with this guy. If I were you, I'd study with him. It's called covalent. And what does that mean? If I have a covalent bond, which hydrogen is, hydrogen bond. They share, but it's going back and forth not evenly. There's more positive one side of that molecule than the other. So your oxygen molecule kind of looks like this. It's got oxygen, but the two hydrogens are only on one side. They're not on either side split evenly. So you got a difference in polarity there. Polarity there. Very strong bond though, by the way, very strong. This is why raindrops form little round nodule-looking shapes. You have something called surface tension from water because of this bond that it has. And it's like cement. I mean, if you ever hit the water going pretty fast from a high, it's like hitting cement, right? It's pretty tough. So what are the other two forms of bonds? Huh? Ionic. This is polar covalent, so it would just be polar covalent. Ionic is the one that you lose them. Right? You got your little shells, and here comes another atom close to you that's missing an electron. It's going to suck one right off of there. It's going to try to pull it away and use it. So they're giving up or they're getting. They have a very distinct electrical charge to them. Very distinct. And the other one isn't more on one end than the other. It's kind of going like the infinity thing, it's sharing it. But with the one like this, it's not an even loop back and forth. It's over here, it's here. So this is going to be different than that. But this is a stronger bond. It is. So what's happening with your little collagen fiber? Those little molecules, the oxygen part to that molecule, where is it? If all the hydrogens are sticking together like crazy, what's happened to that little oxygen part to that molecule? It's sticking out from it, and here it's like sticking out. So the hydrogen bonds uniting the oxygen molecules that are thrusting out from the collagen chain. Each bond is fragile, but when you form a chain out of them, they're no longer fragile. They're no longer fragile, okay? And he's got a little picture showing you that the fibroblast is the one that's spitting out the little collagen fibers. He's making all that stuff. And then it gets organized into however way the matrix is going to look, how those little fibers get organized, okay? And what is kind of unique about this on this same page, I think, don't you think the body's just fascinating? It's just amazing how all this works. It really is. But they're not solid. It's not like a little rod of steel. What do those little revolving 3 helixes form? It's like a hollow rope, right? It's not solid. It's hollow. So they do wrap around each other. It is a 3 helix bonding, but there's still an empty space in the middle. What did he say is inside that space? What did he find? So these guys are all wrapped up, but inside there's a space, and there's something in there. What did he say that you find inside those?
Cerebrospinal.
Yeah, there's cerebrospinal fluid in there. And where else is that?
In your spleen.
Nervous system.
In your nervous system. Your brain and spinal cord are kind of floating inside the column because it's surrounded by all this fluid. And because you can't compress water, what does it act as? A shock absorber, right? That's why your brain is floating in that liquid. Because you can't compress it and it can support it, right? But they're finding this inside these collagen fibers, which are all over your body, everywhere in your body, not just there. So it's another little circulatory system, right? You got another one that's circulating blood. You got one that's moving lymph around, but now you've got these little fibers containing this liquid all over the place, circulating that. They don't really know why. I mean, what's it doing? I'm sure it has a very useful purpose. And it's got something to do with the electrical charge of the body. The electrical charge of the body. So after reading this, and up here on page 74, when you get to the word adhesions, which is right under the picture, who can explain that to me? Don't say knot. You got some knots in your shoulder. They get bundled up. They start getting compacted and glued to each other. Glued to each other. And what we have to do is we have to go in there and we have to pull all the fibers loose. It's like getting gum out of hair. Someone's got a big blob of gum. That's an adhesion, okay? And we got to pry all those little fibers loose. We got to get everything back out from that lump of ground substance, basically, right? That's what it is. Happens as you age. This is part of being aging, you know. We dry out, and I could drink 2 gallons of water a day, and I'm still going to dry out because what's happening? My body isn't able to hold on to that water. You know, it can't hold on to it. Now, why do we tell someone to take a drink of water after a massage?
help to move the fluids through and the toxins that we just flushed.
Well, kind of, sort of. You just softened up that fascia, all right? You put some more fluid in there. There's two states to that ground substance in the fascia, in the matrix. It's either a sol or a gel. If I just put sol up there, what am I talking about? It's an abbreviation for, this is the watery part, right? This is the thicker part. And when you massage someone, you brought heat into the body, didn't you rub them? A little friction, bring a little heat in. Because what are we trying to do? We're trying to soften up this crap and rehydrate it and bring it to more of a liquid state from its gelled state. And this is where it gets worse and worse and worse because the fibers get more stuck to each other and you get more fibers in there. And it becomes pretty solid over time, and then you don't get it back out, right? You don't. So I'm going to try to change these two. Now, based on your reading, tell me what that word is. Based on your reading. The word for this, changing from a gel to a solution. How do I do that? Look back at page 69. What's that word? Thixotropy. Okay, we need to look that up because we don't know what that means. You see trope, tropy, thixo. What am I talking about? Well, what if I had atrophy? What if I had dystrophy? This means a change. There's a change, okay? You're changing something. And it's the consistency of the tissue. If something is really thick, we would say it's what? Viscous. Viscous. That would be the word you'd use. And what does that stand for? Viscous. I have a viscous property to this tissue. That's how much it flows. How much flow does it have? Well, between honey and water, which one is more viscous? The honey, right? That's the gel-like qualities to that fluid, that liquid stuff. And the term we use is thixotropy, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to change it from this to this. We're trying to warm it up, we're trying to soften it up, we're trying to hydrate it. Now, when they get done with the massage, we don't want their body to pull water back out of those tissues. We want it to stay that way, so we're going to ask them to drink some water. Now, do you say drink plenty of water?
No.
No. Because that may be, my plenty of water may not be what you're thinking about. So we're going to give them a little bit of water, and what are we going to say instead? Stay hydrated. Remember, we talk very neutral. We have to be very neutral. And we don't want to be telling people to do stuff. We really don't. Keep hydrated. That's what we're going to say. And what else are we going to say? Get a massage. That's our plan, and we're sticking to it. To change the consistency. It's talking about the consistency. It may not be on there. I'll find it for you. And you're doing it from this to this. Now, that's based on, it's the fibers that give something its rigidity, right? So I'm trying to put more fluid in there, but it's the collagen. And as it dries out, it gets thicker and thicker and thicker, right? Thicker and thicker. and then they hit each other, all those fibers, and then they can't let go, and now they're all bound up. Some books will say cross bridges for that, but what actually is happening is all the collagen fibers are sticking together, and there's no fluid movement through there anymore. And we say a lump because that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. So that connective tissue has properties to it. If I understand the properties, I can change it. But if I don't know what the properties are, I could hurt them instead, right? So I need to kind of know what I'm doing. Should I go in there and beat the heck out of a really stiff and hard muscle that I haven't softened up first and warmed up first? Not a good idea, because what's going to happen? How's the body going to respond to that action? It's going to tear. You're going to have micro tears. There's no give there. It's got to be soft and pliable for there to be give. You even have to do that to exercise, right? Don't they tell you got to warm up first? Why do you have to warm up before you try to use that muscle? Because if you don't, what's going to happen?
Tear.
You get a tear, you get a strain. It's going to hurt like hell too, and you're not going to be the fastest one on the track. I can tell you that. You will not be. So it's got this property, and this is the frictioning that we do, we rub. We're going to change the consistency of that connective tissue. It's going to be soft and pliable and more fluid because it has this property. You can actually take that jelly and wiggle it all around and stir it all up, and it'll get liquid. Do you know what Jell-O is? You eat Jell-O? It's collagen. Just like you, that's all it is. I put it in the refrigerator and it gets cold. What happens to that collagen? It becomes jelly-like, right? It gets really stiff. I take it out and I stir it and I mash it and I play with it. What's going to happen? It goes back to being liquid, doesn't it? And where do they get that? That's from cows. So you're eating a little box of cow collagen.
Yeah, we're never eating Jell-O again.
Yeah, the marrow, it's really, really good. So that's one of the properties. All right, I see that on the end of a word. What am I talking about? It's a process. It's another way to say process, hysteresis. Something is happening. Hysteresis. Something's happening. I'm changing something. So you've got thixotropy, that's the main property of connective tissue. This is another property of connective tissue that changes its consistency. This means I inputted energy into the system. How we do that is something called cyclic loading. So I massage, and I massage, and I massage, and I build up friction and warmth, hysteresis. Now, sometimes when you're doing a massage, when you do cranial sacral work, and you either let their head balance over your fingertips or you're doing something and you're inputting energy into that system, it will give on its own. And we'll say it felt like the tissues melted in my hand. Feels like it because that's kind of like what it did. So if you're holding back here and you tell them to let their head just fall back to the table, at first they're kind of like this, but then after a little while, don't they start going like that? I'm not rubbing them. What's happening? What's changing? It's softening and lengthening, right? I put some energy into the system. The best way to do it is rub them back and forth, back and forth. But if I just support your neck and your head falls back, and at first they're like this, but then you hold it and their neck starts going like that. Because that fascia is going to respond to that energy you put into the system. And then the other one is called creep. Or is that an A or an O?
Oh.
Okay, and this one is called creep. Because fascia is what we call a viscoelastic material, what happens if you warm up plastic and you pull on it? And then you let go? Does it snap back? It stays there, doesn't it? It stays there. So with creep, I try to put pressure and hold it, stretch it out and hold it. And I want it to stay there. You know, once it's soft, I still want it to be longer than it was before. If you wear a pair of tight socks and you take them off at night, can you still see the sock imprint on your leg? You wear a belt that's too tight, you take it off, it's still, but the blood flow is going to come back in there and then it'll go away. But that's what you're doing. That's called creep. That's what happened to the fascia. Is you pushed on it and held pressure there. It's going to stay there, right? It'll stay there. So it will creep. So a lot of times when I tell you, when you do something, I want you to stop and pause. Don't just jerk. Give it a chance to have this property kind of kick in, and it'll lengthen. That's what I'm trying to do, is soften it up and lengthen it. That's what I'm trying to do. Now, neither one of these will work by themselves, because connective tissue is, you know, this is all going to be affected at once when you're working on someone. But these are the properties that it has, okay? Thixotropy, hysteresis, and creep. And we use this a lot in stuff like myofascial release. And to change any stretch you're doing to make it myofascial, all you have to do is anchor one end. So if I'm stretching like this, I'm anchoring it, that's myofascial. If I just did like that, it's not. You have to anchor one end. And you can do this for yourself, and you should do this for yourself. And this is the Russian way to do it. They just take their fingers and they pull like that from either end. You can do a small area, but if I just did that, that's not myofascial. Because I'm not isolating the stretch, you know, to one structure. Most of my work is I kind of incorporate that because I know I get better results. There's more of a change when I do that. It still feels good. I mean, if I took your arm and I just did some little compressions and I did that, that feels good, right? And I could just do that. Doesn't feel as good as that, right? But it's more effective. So we're gonna learn to do it once, but you need to learn how to do it the other way too. And that could be a whole thing that you do myofascial release, because believe me, there's a lot of intricacies to this. I'm just giving you the basics. I don't have time to make you like an expert in each one. And I have to give you a variety of stuff, let everybody hear about different things, because all of you have different interests and have different ideas about what you want to do. So I can't just say, well, 3 people in here want to do sports, so that's what we're going to talk about. You may not like all the other stuff that you got to sit through, but I'm sorry. One day it might be something that you want to do. Or you might get called. So you may already have an idea, you know, but you still have to be open to learning a little bit about all the other. You may not want to do energy work ever. But you still have to know something about it, right? You still have to know something about it.
Can you explain the difference between hysteresis and thixotropy?
This is what's going to happen to the fascia itself. It's going to warm up like taffy, you know. The more you take the taffy and fold it over on itself, the property is changing from a gel to a sol. You become more liquidy. That's going to take place because of what I'm doing here too, right? This will cause that to happen. That will cause this to happen. And hysteresis is putting energy into it. Usually it's because we're squeezing it and mashing it and pulling on it. That's how we get the energy in there, frictioning. And the result of friction is heat. And what does heat do to plastic? It makes it more pliable, right? Even if the water content does not change, it's still the same amount of water. I didn't add any water, but I heated it up, now it's stretchy. Now it's stretchy. And once I've done all that, if I hold it in place, hopefully, it's pretty much going to stay there. But all of this happens at the same, I mean, it's not just one or the other. I can focus more on creep. I could just hold, right? I could focus more on that. Cyclic loading, I'm going to do this over and over and over in that one spot, in that one spot. Or I just simply add some heat. Or a little agitation. I'm going to change the consistency. So that's what connective tissue, that's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. And all that's in here, okay? I'm talking about it with you, but trust me, it's in here. And he wrote it kind of in a conversational tone. Everything has what we call a voice. You know, how are you writing it? What voice are you using? And this is more like conversational talk. Other anatomy books, it's just the facts, ma'am. It's like Friday, you know, and Dragnet. Just want to know the facts, just the facts. And that's good, but what happens when all those facts get put together with all the other facts? What's going to happen? And I need to know how to... Connective tissue, like I said, is most of the body, and that's what you're working on more than anything else, is trying to change it. Remove those adhesions, soften it up, and let it lengthen, because that's going to give people back movement, and it's also going to reduce pain. Remember, that's our goal. What is your goal? What's your goal? You do Swedish, you do neuromuscular, whatever you do, what's your goal?
Feel better than they can.
They will, but how? Why? How do you feel better?
Release stress.
And that would be a psychological factor from the massage, the feelings that you get from it.
Help us relax and release stress.
That's in your
But
medical term.
I mean, you can get a massage if you're not having pain. It'll still be beneficial to you.
Yeah. But this is the change I want to see happen for that person. Reduce their discomfort. Maybe they just have a stiff shoulder and they're not like screaming in pain, but name one person that doesn't have some kind of problem somewhere in their body. They don't exist. They don't, mainly because of posture. We got problems because of posture. But this is what you're doing. You're going to reduce the pain that they feel, which is the discomfort, all right? And by doing that, we're going to, that's our goal. How do we do it? We have two things we can do. How do we reach our goal? What are the two things you do to allow you to reach your goal? One of them is observation. What's the other one? What do you do when you massage somebody? Palpation. And when I touch you, it's not just a touch. When I say palpation, that changes it. What does it mean when I say I palpate? What are you doing? Somebody look that word up. Yeah, look up the word palpation. Why do we use that word? Why is that so important to know what it means?
To use my hands to examine the body.
You're doing an assessment, okay? Every time you put your hands on someone, what your hand should be doing even without your conscious thought is assessing the tissues you're working on. I gotta know I gotta know the feel, right? Is it hard? Is it soft? I can't just ignore that and I'm just going to rub you the same as I rubbed everybody else today. So my observation starts the minute I meet you. When I say hello, right? How did you stand up from the chair? How did you respond? Where are your shoulders at? How are you breathing? And then you walk. You look at how they walk. Are they walking like this? Are they walking? How are they walking? Now, some people will make you go through all these tests. They'll have this piece of graph paper up on the wall, and they'll measure, and they'll do a plumb line. Okay. if I can't observe you in your natural way, the natural way that you move is a lot different than when you think somebody's, staring at you. That's the difference in OT and PT. I want you. I'm not treating a symptom. I'm not treating a form, a deviation. I'm treating you. And I know all that. And you get on the table, you thought you were straight on the table. How many people, you go in there and they're like this? They get up there and they lay down and their legs are over here. That felt straight to them, right? That felt straight to them. They can't put their legs together. Their little feet flop out. That tells me everything I need to know from observing you. And I know everything I need to know from touching you. It's going to come through your touch. So you're not just rubbing them. You are assessing every single thing that you touch and feel. You're assessing it. It's an ongoing thing. That information is being picked up, sent to your brain, which is going to determine, well, my next technique is going to be this because that's what I feel. And it's hard and lumpy. I really maybe should change my tactics for that tissue, right? So this is what we do. We don't diagnose, do we?
No.
We don't give advice. We don't counsel. We can't order x-rays. We can't do all that stuff. This is what we do, and we're really good at it. And in the book, what did he say about us for people, for the palpation part? Who else touches them? Nobody. Nobody. And that's us, though. We do. And we have to be able to send them out if we feel that what we've seen and touched needs care, medical care, that you're not able to provide. There's someone who just did a course, and I'm going to try to incorporate it in here, on melanoma. That's skin cancer, right? And we're going to touch on it, but I'm curious to see what she's put together. It's like 30 minutes, because you are the person who's touching people, and you are the person who's observing. How do you know when something starts changing at some point that it's now cancerous? And remember, the earlier you catch it, the better you have of surviving it. And you could have you could have melanoma right there, and the doctor never even asked you to take your shirt off. You've been up there for what, 3 months, going back and forth. He never even wants to look at your skin. And you could be dead. So who does look at it?
Us.
Who does feel for the aneurysms and the ballooned out things and all that kind of stuff? That's us. That's us. So I'll get it. It's free. You can just, watch it. Because some of the things that I'm pretty simple, and there's pictures and you can get online and stuff like that. But that's something you really kind of need to know, especially in South Florida, right? And if you think they've got athlete's foot, when do you think you should mention that to them?
As soon as possible.
Should you?
At the end.
Yeah, don't mess up their massage. Don't start off with some negative observation you made. If it was something you need to ask, what's this scar?
Would you put on a glove if you got in? Would you put on a glove if you got in?
If you feel necessary to wear gloves, you can. How many massage therapists do you see wearing gloves? But they touch those feet all day long, don't they? So you get contact dermatitis, you pretty much can't work for a while. So I'd rather you be able to work. That's why you wear the DermaShield.
Oh, the DermaShield would be best.
Yeah. But if you do, now if you don't have DermaShield on, you have to avoid the area. So I can't do my nice, beautiful little foot massage because you got all this crappy flake stuff on the toes, right? So that's why I wear it. That's why I wear it. But is this kind of making sense now? Because we've done this like 3 or 4 times in class, and the more you hear it, the more sense it will make. But how you need to get a grip on it is you need to organize it. You need to organize the information so that you can see how it all fits together. And you could, like you could add the matrix and all the, you could add to that handout, include all that stuff. All right, go to lunch and come back. One thing you guys could do, Broward is really good about doing deliveries. So right before lunch or so, if you call them and say, I'd like to have an order, either they'll have it ready for you when you pull in up there, or they'll bring it here. They know this room. They know where we are. When we're doing clinic, this is where you're going to eat. They'll bring it all here to you. Did you go to the doctor?
They wouldn't let me do two things in one visit.
Well, I must keep active.
Another appointment for my shoulders.
Okay. Now that we're going to start working, I would like to know that what we're dealing with, just so we don't hurt you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a next available appointment, and I may have to miss class out for it. Or I may just find another doctor.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, because I need to know if we need to restrict some of the moves that we're doing, just until you get better. But I don't know what to do for you now, and I don't want to hurt you. Don't want to make it worse.
All up on his migraine right now.
Yes. I saw the email. We're going to bring it up after lunch. But there is method to my madness. Remember, we do things three ways. You observe, you practice, and you get worked on. So the observation part it's not going to be a hindrance for this class to be the size it is, because some of you need to be observing. I'll make you do it if I only had 8 students. And that gives people working a chance to kind of, because if you can explain it to someone else or you see them doing it wrong and you tell them, that makes you learn it. That helps you to understand what you're doing,
But no, okay, I mean, no, it's all right. I mean, but we're going to do that again, right? Because, people that were on the table, we're going to do it.
Yeah. So you're going to watch people work, you're going to work yourself, and you're going to get the work done. Some people don't want to get the work done to them, but you sign the form saying okay, so you got to participate. Yes, love.
Do you have any
But I am still going to ask, though. We're still going to try to.
on the draping? Do you have that sheet on draping, the meridian facial thing? Do you have that paper?
Yeah. Did you lose yours?
Yes, I lost.
Okay.
Draping and
All right. The draping is right over here, and I may not have a copy of the marma points up here. I think I took them downstairs, but let me see. Oh, wait a minute. There it is.
oh, okay. And
Did you have this one?
Yeah, I had,
Okay.
I had that one. The one that you were talking about, the anatomy one, do you have that one?
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks.
You have that one?
no.
No?
Coach, I just want to let you know that my appointment for the doctor is for tomorrow in the morning. So after I finish that, just coming back.
Thank you for letting me know. Where's your... How heavy is that purse? Have you got your books in there? No. All right.
Yeah, do you have the draping, please?
And we just handed this out. Okay. Did everybody get the little planner from
Yeah, they're so cute.
here?
There's a microwave freeze. You guys just have any forks? Coach?
What, like,
They have forks.
have what?
Forks over there. Right? Please.
Yes. And if you run out, let me know, because I have another box over there.
Okay.
Yeah. They're all mixed up, though, so I don't know how many's left. But I do have more silverware. But I'm going to Costco today, so I'm going to get some bowls. And I'll go ahead and buy another thing of silverware. The what?
The peach tea.
Okay.
There's a child that started with money.
I was looking at it.
Hello.
lens. How was it? Did you get good?
Leah, let me look in here and see what we got in here. There might be peach in here. Green tea, tea.
Everything but.
Everything but. This is really good. The orange and
Orange spice,
spice.
yeah, that's one I usually get if I don't. This one looks good too. I think you still have a box of that over there.
Nice to meet you. Yes. It's good.
Is there any green tea over there? There is? Okay. Hmm? Sure, yeah, of course.
The green tea lemon is there.
I have to go to Nova. I have a game tonight.
Yeah, there's like 4 or 5 bags of green tea.
Okay, I'll get some more.
So next, my girlfriend is in physical therapy school. And next year, they do clinical rotation. They can go anywhere in the country. We're thinking about going for 8 weeks to Arizona.
Ooh.
For like a little adventure.
There's the woman who kind of invented the massage using just pressure. Not Dr. Vell, who came up with trigger point work, but she turned it into a massage modality. Her name is Bonnie Pruden, and her school called Myotherapy is out there. So I'm not sure if you're going, where was it? It's the city that's close to the border. It's not the capital. But you could Google it. Look at it. It's just called Myotherapy Institute, I think. And they, go tour it. Just look around. They might have like a little intro class or something. It's worth checking it out.
Hopefully find somewhere to Christmas time. Maybe we can get to like shadow somebody over there for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Where's his station?
That'd be great. That'd be great.
He's doing training.
So how long is she going to be there?
Which is basically
They do
special
3
forces.
next year, and they're each of them are 8 weeks long.
So he's
so we would be wherever we go, it would be for 8 weeks.
And then after Rangers, he should be going to grade school.
Dang, I'm jealous. I would love to do that. Love it. Be so great. I don't know if Bonnie's still alive or not. She must be in her 90s if she is.
I think this is how you do it.
You should let her see this book.
She wants to shoot a couple.
Yep. Because they use the trail guide.
She'll say, "Oh, there's too many words for an anatomy."
He said it's not that bad. Like, he loves it. He loves it.
They're very charts and diagrams.
Yeah, very cut and dry. They probably get fired if they called someone honey or sweetheart or touched them, or because that personal thing, they're not allowed to have it with the patient.
Got you.
They are taking over the OT field, though. Fewer and fewer jobs out there for OTs.
have to be in like a SNF facility or
Yeah.
a nursing home or something like that? No?
Oh, this has been a while, but even back then, they were doing stuff that was completely OT before, like working with preemies and all that. Now, PTs are hired for that instead of OT.
I like your roll.
All right, somebody turned in a blank envelope with no name on it. Isn't that supposed to be stamped or something? But I need to know who this is because I'm going to give it back to you. I just want a copy.
Just add the flavor, add the
Is that yours?
one of the best protein sources.
Yeah, I was trying to make it on a sound state, but I only have a little bit left though.
That's what I was doing. I was like, I have no time to make anything, so I just grabbed some chips, had some meat and some cheese, some tomatoes, and I had that. A lot of you can make delicious food quick. People don't realize that you don't really have to put in every single time an hour or two to make something. There's a lot of like one of my neighbor that was across the hall. He literally has like a book this thick of quick and
Yeah, I just need to make a
simple,
picture.
delicious recipes. And like some of the
Thank you.
crazy
Be right
stuff
back.
that you get in restaurants.
I was watching the cooking channel. That's hard to make. Oh my God. No, you're whipping and you got a lot of air in it.
It takes a crap load of egg yolks. And you can only use the yolks. You can't use the whites.
Right. That's why it's so fattening.
Julia Childs, this girl was helping her, and she had the pot up on other water, and it looked like, I mean, it was very complicated.
That's very proper.
Yeah, the French way, very, very complicated.
Okay, now I know.
Anyway, I finally got hold of those things and I made copies. And actually, I made a copy of the one that I did on South Campus. So they're telling me that she's always been a problem. The reason why I'm calling you is because you need to keep an extra eye on her. It's really to know what it is. It says she's got all kind of issues. So I finally, she has all kind of issues. Like things from the South, there's a reason why she transferred to us. That she can find you, or she can find you, or something, hours. Even as of now, she hasn't completed these hours. I already told her to do.
Hey, honey, were you working on this? This was left in the copier.
No, it wasn't. I think that was actually Joseph. You can put it right on Natalia's desk because that's where he's sitting.
Oh, okay.
Hello, mamá, ¿cómo estás? Ahora bien.
Jim, this was in the copier. I was going to put it in there. You think it's a new guy? Okay. Don't know where it goes.
Is it a new one?
I don't know. It was in the copier, so I have no
I
idea.
just wanted you to know that that's too like very
But there's,
solid.
I was going to leave it in there, but nobody's in there.
Because she kept telling me my clinical instructor was supposed to go down, but they just didn't want to give all these copies, and she was supposed to have copies. So they told her, have your clinical instructor. Stuff like that. But she didn't find anything. So hopefully tomorrow she has everything else together. So I'll see you tomorrow. And tomorrow, good. Correct. By Mary and that lady, the other lady. Yeah. Exactly. We both find out tomorrow. No, please. I just wanted to let you know about the students, not about what I did. I just wanted you to keep an extra eye on her because she's a little crazy. They said she was having like, she was having issues and things, they didn't tolerate any kind of book or something. So I don't know why. I'll see you tomorrow.
I did. Good. Mm-hmm.
Really? Because this is blood. Wow.
Did you play a game called Deus Ex?
Oh, I did.
Every time.
Oh yeah.
I don't have time for it anymore. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Daniel left it. She keep it for him, please.
Why do I need this?
No, I said Daniel left it. Can you keep it for him?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I'm not like studenting this too much.
What?
On the immunizations records, example, hepatitis B documented vaccination in last 365 days. I need a shot in the last 365 days? Or
No, proof of the titer.
okay, so just like the record needs to be no more than a year old.
Right.
Okay.
I'm checking to make sure because I had the shot, but it was 14 years ago.
All right, well, who's doing the rest of your paperwork?
I'm the only one doing it.
Well, when you take that to whoever's going to do the rest of it,
Yeah.
show that, because that has to be included in here.
Okay.
Okay. So like up there, he would put, that you have
So
proof of that.
is that what, I mean, the record has to be within the year or not the shot, right? Because my records are from, I think, 2010.
When did you get the shot, though?
2010. Me, I got mine in 2010.
So they're gonna check for your titers.
Yeah, and
Get a blood test.
yeah.
It's just like 10 minutes. You're gonna cross diagnostic.
Check my blood and see.
Right. So I can just go to Quest and say, hey.
We'll go to whatever doctor you're going to do that at first, because then
Yeah.
you'll write the order for the blood test. They'll send it over.
So you're going to have someone do the whole form, take that and show them that you already have that, and they'll say, well, we have to do this instead or whatever. But
Yeah.
okay.
I took it to a doctor, but they only mentioned that the record was attached for a couple. I don't know why. So,
Ask them.
yeah.
Don't travel back over there. Just call them first and say, I was just in here and I have this, and yeah. Well, I guess if they did that, that means they think it's still okay, but I just leave it up to the doctor. I really don't know.
Is this the way at the college you can ask about that?
There is. Where all this gets turned in is a lady named Karen Murphy. And she may defer to the doctor, because the doctor will say, what you did then is still okay. You don't need a booster. But he's probably going to want to verify that you, because that could be, it could be false.
They're going to want to verify that you have the antibodies, so they're probably going to make us take that test.
They're going to want to make proof, make a form that you give them from somewhere. It could have been forged, so. She had a good question. This is if you look in your manual, it's in there. Guys, if you don't pass a test, you get 2 chances to retake it. That's in your manual. Usually a week, and it won't be the same test. But yeah, I am. Yes, I gave you you already have your study guide, so I don't want to hear any excuses. You already got it. For my goodness, you should be able to pass it with no problem. And I always give extra points. I'll put something on for extra points, so you can do that. I can't find the video I was going to show you. Howard Hughes Institute made it. It was really, really good. So I'll have to, I don't know why it's not coming up. But that's another thing that, that's it, yeah. Another really good place besides Khan Academy and everything else is Howard Hughes Institute. Just put HHI in, it'll come up. It's not a whole lot, but some really interesting videos, really nice little things you can see from there. Some things on biology. But my goodness, there's probably 50,000 of them on there now. Pop quiz. So, close your books. Close your books. Write your name at the top. Write your name at the top. Please put your name at the top. You don't put your name at the top, you get a big fat 0.
May I have one for the office?
Yeah. Close all your notebooks up and everything and write your name at the top. All right, number one. I want you to tell me the action that I just did. Tell me the action.
Is that number 2?
That's number 2.
Wait, what was number 2? Action.
What I just did.
That was 2.
That was 2. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 3. That was number 3. Number 4.
What?
What was number 4?
Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Wrist. 5. What did I just do with my wrist? The wrist. What is the wrist?
That's 5 or 6.
First you did the elbow flexion, and then this is number 6. What is the position? What's the action? Okay. See that? What was to happen to my hand? What's my hand? Okay. For my hand.
That's number 7. Oh.
Number 7. Number 7. Oh my God, come on, keep up, people.
We're at number 8.
Number 8. Number 8. Tell me what my body is doing. What's the body do when you do this? What's it called? What is my wrist doing? Wrist. What is my wrist doing?
Which one?
They're both doing the same thing, honey, so you can pick.
No, you went from here to here, and then you went from here to here. When do you want?
This is another number. Okay, this was 1. This is the next one. This is 9. Okay, I think. 10. Number 11. Number 11, okay? What is my head doing, my neck? Okay. What is my neck doing? What are my fingers doing? Wrist. What is my scapula doing? What is my scapula doing? What is my shoulder doing? Start at neutral, go in that direction. What do we call that action? Hip. Hip. Go like that. What do you call it? Shoulder. Shoulder.
That's 19.
What is my foot doing? What's your foot doing when you do like that? Pick your toes up off the ground. What's it called? What is your foot doing if you do that? You stand on your toes. If you stand on your toes, what's that called? What is my thumb doing? What's my thumb doing? All right, we're going to go back down them. So watch what I do. Watch what I do. Don't say anything. I'm repeating the question, okay? All right, that's number 1, right? This is number 2. This is number 3. Number 4. What's that called? This is number 6, whatever that is. You tell me what that is, okay?
That should be 7.
That's 7? We did this, 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 this.
5, 6, 7.
No, you did it backwards. This was 7.
This is 6.
All right, 7 is pronation. Do what?
If number 7 is pronation, then number 6 is super.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's not what I understand. I mean, 6 is pronation.
Flip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, wrist. 9 at the wrist. 10 at the wrist. 10. Neck.
Wait, that's not what you did.
No, it's not. 10 was this. 10 was this.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Flex.
Wait.
I thought I did the side bending. I thought I did.
You did 2 wrists and then 2 neck.
What did she do for 11?
Do you have 23?
22.
22.
All right, so maybe I didn't do the neck thing in the middle there.
So what's number 11?
Hyperextend, right?
Yeah. We'll have that as number 10.
What number is that?
That you did on number 12.
What number are you?
Screw this. All right, just put your pen down. I just want I had that in order. So put your pen down, all right? I'm going to do the action, and we're going to go around the room, and you're going to tell me the answer, okay? And we'll start in the back. We'll start with Zhinanov. What am I doing? Very good. Ron. Can I call you Ron or Ronald? Or okay. What am I doing?
Adduction. Adduction.
Adduction. What am I doing? You. Judane? Judali? I always say it wrong. Okay. George, what am I doing? Don't look at your list. Just tell me what I'm doing. We're going to go around the room. What am I doing? Okay. What am I doing? Okay. What am I doing at the elbow? You're right, but full flexion, full flexion. You, what am I doing at the scapula? That's what that was. You at the neck. You at the whole body. You don't know? Do you know? All right, anybody. I'm doing this. Side bending. You do the right and the left. Side bending to the right and the left. Side bending to the left. All right. Well, now to you. I have to have a word for you. Scapula.
Protraction.
Protraction. Okay, I'll give you another one. The wrist.
That's radio.
Starts with a D. Anybody? Deviation. Okay. At the hip. What the hip do? What did my hip do? Anybody? Flexion. Okay, flexion. You want another one before I move on?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
all right. At the shoulder.
Horizontal abduction.
Which one?
Abduction.
Very good. Okay. All right, tell me what my scapula is doing when I do this. Just the scapula. What did the scapula do? Which way? Which way did it go? Look at my back. Think about that little bone sitting right there. What did it have to do for me to do that? Huh? Not elevation, because it's called rotation. It's upward rotation, okay? Upward rotation. It had to go like that to get out of the way when I raise my arm up, okay? Let's see. What is my body doing? Not rocking. It's her question. What am I doing? You got to take your fingers out of your mouth. Yes. And you got to speak up. I can't hear this. I don't know what you're saying on you. This means I don't know. Let's see. I got to find a hard one for you. Let me see.
For me.
I'm going to go over here next. Yeah, do.
Oh, okay, you're elevating the hip.
Very good. That wasn't that hard. All right, never mind. Wrist. Wrist.
Flexing.
I'm in this position. Now, what are the fingers doing to get back to this position? No, his turn. His, in front of you, Ronnie's. I'm like this, and then I go like that. What's that action?
Oh, me?
Yeah, you.
Adduction.
Very good. It's adduction. Very good. That's it. Emma, let's see. If I do this at the hip, what's it called? The hip. What did the hip do when I went like that? Which way? It rotated, but which way did it rotate? What do you call that? Very good. You're doing this too. You know, this means I don't know. I don't know. Okay, I stand up, military stance. What's my scapula doing? Scapula. Very good. It's retracting. It's retracting. Piero, if I do that to my foot, what am I doing? What kind of flexion? You stand on your toes, what do we call that? When you stand on your toes? No? Should enough, do you know? Anybody? Very good. Plantar. Stand on your toes, it's plantar. It's plantar. And what would be the opposite of that? Dorsey. Anybody. I turn my feet facing each other. Turn your feet facing it, not invert. Invert. So when I turn my feet and the bottom of my foot's facing in, that's invert. And then I do this, that would be evert. At the ankle, if I do that, dorsiflexion. If I do that, plantar flexion. At the knee, if you do this, and that. At the hip, if you do that, and that. This.
Inward rotation. External.
If I do this, horizontal, horizontal add, and if I bring it back, horizontal abduction. If I do this at the hip, what did my hip do?
Elevated. Let me see. Can't see.
What's the opposite of elevation? So if you look at my hip, when I did that, my hip went down, right? And then if I do that, elevation. Then it elevated. What if I tilt it the back, the top back? What would we call that? Posterior tilt. If I point it front, anterior tilt, anterior tilt. Your whole body, if you do this with your trunk, flexion, you come back,
extension,
and you keep going. Hyperextension. You go like this with your whole body, you're side bending. You do this with your whole body, you're rotating. If you do this with your neck, come back, keep going.
rotate.
So my head can do it separate from the rest of me. Same actions, right? Same actions. At the shoulder.
Flexion. Full flexion. Adduction.
You guys better study. If you don't know this, you've had this for 5 weeks. We're going on 5 weeks. And seeing it on a piece of paper is one thing, but you got to recognize it when you see it, okay? Flex is to 90, right?
Horizontal. Full flexion.
No, honey, just no. If you come past 90, it's full flexion. If I only come to here, it's flexion. And then I return to neutral, it's extension. What is this? Hyperextension. I'm going past neutral, okay? So my shoulder, my hip turn in, they turn out. They elevate, they depress. They flex and extend, and they rotate. So they're fully triaxial, right? Triaxial. So my trunk, okay, shoulder, and then anybody?
Horizontal adduction. Horizontal abduction.
Go back, okay. Name the 6 ways the scapula moves. Give me one movement of the scapula. That's one. Bianca, what's another? That better be something related to class.
No, it was my mom, sorry. Depression.
Mm-hmm. You? He said, yeah, and retract. So elevate, protract, retract. That's 3. Wait a minute. What's another one? We just named 3. We protracted and retracted and we elevated. There's 3 more ways it can move, huh? She already said that. We got elevate, depressed, and retract. What's the other 3? Where it said that? We said protract and retract and elevate. What would go with elevate? Starts with a D? Yeah.
Oh, I just said direction.
But you said elevate. We just had 3 answers, right? We only got 3. Okay. All right. Now there's 2 more. Who knows what they are? Downward rotation is one. And what would be the opposite? Upward rotation. It moves 6 ways. It goes up, it goes down. It goes forward, it comes back. It turns up and it turns down. Does 6 things, right? That's all it does, the scapula. The scapula. Now together with the shoulder, it helps you move all around, like with the shoulder, but that's what it does, only 6 things. So think about the numbers with that list I gave you. Maybe it'll help you to remember how many should I have, how many numbers. If it goes on 6 ways, then I need to find 6 answers, right? Because that's how it moves. And the shoulder, it would be elevate, flex, extend, just the main ones. Flex, extend, horizontal, abduction, horizontal, adduction, rotates in, rotates out. Okay? And then you can add hyperextension if you want, but that's basically the way we look at it, is those main moves that it does, right? That's it. Huh?
We have one.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can go online and find, and in your trail guide, there's a really nice page in there. Oh, that reminds me. I didn't really assign anything for the trail guide yet because it's kind of touching on systems, but you can go in and look in here on chapter 1, and it's got all the planes and the regions and all the actions, okay? And then what I'd like for you to do is if you go in there and look, all right, page 101. In here, if you don't have your book, I'll show you. When we were talking about endangerment sites. Now, all of this is in your theory book. It is, kind of overlaps. It's in the theory too. But this is a really nice book to show you that arm. And remember we said that was an endangerment site and you should not be gripping them on the inside of the arm. Well, there's why you shouldn't be doing it. That's just right under the skin. So you might want to circle that page in your book. That's 101. Okay. And then here's 162. Here is the inside of the elbow, why it hurts when you grab somebody there. It's called the funny bone, although it's not very humorous. But you can see how it's laying right on the surface, right? So we're not squeezing. This is just a good rule anyway. You don't squeeze a joint. This one is 162 for the ulnar endangerment site. Okay. I do have the latest edition here. Okay. 219. So you could circle this or make a separate list, but go in here and look at this stuff. Now, here you can see really good when we were talking about the aorta on someone's abdomen. Okay, you see how big that thing is? It's 1 inch wide. It's huge. And it goes right down the center, and then it splits. And we never have our hand down that far, so we're right there. So, on top of it, you're going to feel the pulse. You absolutely are. But if it's kind of out to the side, and feel a pump somewhere besides right there, it shouldn't be there, right? And what an aneurysm is one little area on the wall got weak, and the blood just pushes it out like a balloon. And it's very thin. It's not muscular like the artery itself, and it could burst. It's just that inner lining full of blood, basically what it is. So when you work on someone, you want to be sure that what you're feeling should be there, and it shouldn't be there, and it should be just right down the middle. And it is strong, but it shouldn't be like pushing your hand up like this when it beats. And it shouldn't be deviated. When you go off to the side and you're working someone's abdomen, you shouldn't feel a pulse. Okay? And no one's going to know that except us. No one's going to know that except you when you touch them. Or until it bursts and you like got dead in 5 minutes or whatever. Then go to 272. So if I just rest my hands on your stomach to do my touch with intent, I can pretty much check that out, can't I? All right, now look at this, the vertebral artery. See how you've got little holes in the side of your cervical vertebrae? And it passes through there. This is why I had everybody test their neck in the beginning to see if that's okay. Because if that narrows, you got a bulging disc, something is out of alignment, and you hyperextend their neck and turn it to the right or the left, and it constricts this, they'll start feeling dizzy. You cut the blood supply to their head, right? So, but you always want to check and make sure that that's okay. And that's why we do that. That's what it looks like. Now this is in your other book, your theory book, but I thought you might want to see this. All right, and then in your neck, we talked about the neck being a very delicate area, and you have a muscle that cuts across at an angle called your SCM muscle. And in front, it forms a triangle, and behind, it forms a triangle. And now you see right there why you shouldn't be poking your fingers in that gap. Because look at what you're poking. All those nerves and arteries and veins. It's right there under the surface. This is 274. So I can feel thick muscle back here. I can see the SCM, how it goes across. So in between those two spaces right there, I don't want to see your fingers digging in, because this is what you're digging in on. So be very careful. Okay, very careful. So these places are called endangerment sites because you can endanger someone if you don't pay attention to them. What is the one on the small of the back that's right under your ribs on either side? Your kidneys. Don't be pushing on them. You can massage, but you can't do striking blows. You better not put your elbow into them, because that would hurt. Now, you're not going to do this, but just know that your femoral triangle is that upper third, right inner thigh. There's also arteries and veins and nerves in there too, but it's mainly for their privacy, right? So if I were doing therapy and I had to go into that area, I'm going to be careful. Because at the top, like everywhere else, you'll see the arteries, the veins, and the nerves are just sitting right under the skin. There's nothing protecting them. All right, this is just a drawing. You know, it's just a drawing, but it's a pretty good drawing to show you how the tensegrity is in your body and how they're all connected, and the bones are the rods there, the levers there, and the whole design is to allow your body to have force pass through it without being damaged. And you can get something, this little model thing that they have, that you can make one. I never could do it because you got to stretch rubber bands from this little piece of wood to that little piece of wood, and it's one of those frustration where you want to like kick something. So I stopped. It's in the garbage. I never could figure it out. This is 82. Talking about tensegrity. You know what you should do? I'm sure that I told you this. But first you want to get an overview. Open it up and just leaf through the pages. Leaf through the pages first. Go back and then look. It's divided up and there's different sections and it's got a heading for that section. So what are all the sections called in that chapter? What are those? Little paragraph things like that? That's a section out of the chapter, right? And what are they called? What is it talking about there? Just the heading, just so you know. You get an idea. and then go back and read it. Maybe one in the middle kind of was the best one that you looked at, and you kind of want to know that one first. And then go back and organize the information under that topic heading, because that's what it's talking about in there, right? And try to get the nut, the kernel, out of the information that they're trying to tell you in that chapter. Underline it, circle it, put a star by it, whatever. Please don't think, well, I'm going to turn this book back in, and I'm not going to mark it up. Well, it's really hard to learn if you don't mark the book up. And you should keep them anyway, because these are things you can keep and, learn from for a long, long time. Because a lot of this, it's going to take you a while to kind of get the hang of it. All right, on page 83, it also talks about, because you have all of those little compartmentalized areas, it kind of helps to keep things from spreading too, to have it kind of separated out. Not completely, of course, but... and then they talk about growth hormone on page 84. If you look on page 85, the second paragraph, it talks about deprivation dwarfism. So if not having touch doesn't kill you, it will at least stunt your growth, mentally and physically. So these poor babies in those orphanages, the ones who manage to survive, they're not real smart, They have a lot of social phobias. And they're not very big. It just cuts down that whole thing. You just don't grow. And for people and animals, the animals in the lab, they would do this and that and see the difference. And even if they survive not ever being held or touched or having a mommy figure in there, those mice are this big and everybody else is this big. So tactile stimulation, or the lack of it, produces certain emotional and conceptual responses in the higher brain. Pituitary secretions, they affect the overall health of your connective tissues and their ability to respond to trauma. And these effects are all very different from mere relaxation. Okay? It does more than that. I mean, we use that word a lot. We throw it around a lot. But there's a lot more going on when you get massaged, the body work that you're doing. For the skin itself, circulation and everything else. But it's really having a profound effect on the overall structure of that person. They have done tests where after a massage, how long does a massage last, by the way?
A week.
You should get one every week, but 24 hours. They took blood and urine and they massaged somebody, and then they took some more blood and urine and they took it over a series of days, and your body was still excreting high levels of stress hormones after a week. It targets all that bad stuff, and it helps your body rid itself of it. So all the adrenaline and all that nasty stuff, 120% above normal is what you're excreting after a really good massage, and that lasts for a week. It'd be nice if you could get one every day, right? If you could afford it. Plato and Aristotle got one every day. They lived to be over 100, and you can only imagine in their day what that means, because the average life was like 22 years, and they were over 100. And Bob Hope, when he died, remember what he said before he died? Everybody goes, God, you're over 100. What do you do? What do you do? He says, well, I get a massage every day. Kept himself healthy, right? Kept himself healthy.
So we're just going to be great.
You are going to be the best. So, where's that big bad word stress in here? Where's that big bad word? Or is that 10? All right, here's the picture I was telling you about, the sweater. Now, I used a little tent to show you how connective tissue works. And he's got a little sweater there. I said if these guide wires over here got closer to the tent, these over here have to stretch out. But what happens, because it's one continuous thread, if there's some kind of trauma over here on this side of my body, everything else got pulled out of whack too. That stress passed right through me, every part that connective tissue goes, it's not right now. So every trauma, every stress, every bad posture, everything that you do like that, it affects the whole thing. Now, we for a long time had a problem with insurance companies. Don't touch him anywhere else. He's just got coverage for his hip. He was in a car wreck. That's it. We're not paying you to work on the rest of his body. Well, how the heck can I be effective at his hip if I can't work the fascia and all the other joints that are connected to those muscles? I mean, you can't do it. You know, you really can't do it. So we did it anyway. We didn't bill them for it. So lines of stress. And this is also affecting how you heal too. Having massage. What did I tell you about if something's acute? What do we say about that? That means immediate, but how do I treat something that's acute? Or do I treat something that's acute? No. Very specialized massage that is designed for acute problems like edema and that kind of stuff, manual lymph drainage, but nothing else. And I wouldn't do it unless I was under a doctor's direction for that. So I don't work on that. For how long? Up to 72. I like to play it safe. I don't know about you, but I like to play it safe. 48 to 72, but you should really wait 3 days. And what are you doing in the meantime? What are you doing in those hours? What are you doing to help your problem? Have you had your is it CPR? CPR? Rest, ice, compression, elevation. And it doesn't have to be way up in the air so you got a problem with your arm. 4 inches above the heart is really all you need. What's the next phase of healing? It's acute, then it's
Chronic.
subacute, and then it's chronic. So past the 72, I'm now in subacute. I can work on you then. And I definitely can work on chronic, because what's chronic all about? They're pretty much, it's pretty much yours for life, right? And how you deal with it is going to be whether you suffer a lot from that or you don't. Dr. Travell, who came up with trigger points, she was also John F. Kennedy's physician. She kept that poor man out there. If you know anything about him, you know how much pain he was in all the time. He broke his back in World War II. I mean, his back was broken. And they kind of pieced him back together. And she kept him on his feet. And he was, you know, he didn't want people to know how. It's like with FDR. If you didn't really know that he was paralyzed, because he was always sitting at a desk with his arm there and in the back of the car waving. He never stood up in the car, right? But he wanted people to think he was active. And John F. Kennedy did too. He tried to keep that from the public. So he would be in the airplane dying of pain, and he would get his crutches and he'd walk up to the door of the airplane and he'd say, give me a minute, give me a minute. And he'd kind of get, and then he would take the crutches away and they would open the door and he would out and walk down the stairs, you know, and then get in the car and collapse again. Collapse again. That's why he had that rocking chair in the office. That was for his back. So he was in a lot of pain. A lot of pain. I don't know how many operations that poor man had on his back, but a lot. And he had something called Addison's disease, which is a thyroid problem. An adrenal problem, and that pretty much kills everybody. So under the medical care that he got, he managed to hang in there, you know. But who knows for how long, but the poor man was in pain. That's why he was so thin and small, you know. And the Addisons gave him that big shock of hair that held over his forehead. Everybody thought that was so cute that he was always going to have to do it. No, that was from a horrible disease that was killing him. And he looked tan, he was out on his yacht. No, that was Addison's disease. He couldn't get on his yacht. They would have to like stretcher him on and off. Yeah. So by her care of him, she kind of figured out that something's going on with the muscular system, and she kind of mapped out those points. And now we all do it, like we all do myotherapy now. But that was only from like the 60s that she first developed that. All right, movement towards health and disease. Number 10, the main thing that I want you to take away from this, don't think you have to memorize these little drawings. I'm not asking you to learn the nervous system right now. I just want you to understand what's happening inside you. And all of this is really, I mean, if you look at the Ayurvedic techniques and what they're talking about, it's all this. It's all this. So what's the most important thing to have a healthy body? Your attitude, right? It's your attitude. Because the body doesn't go anywhere the mind doesn't take it. It can't. So what he's telling you in here about learning massage or anything else, it's the focus that you have, right? I need to visualize what I'm doing before I do it. If you let your mind walk you through something, what's happening inside your body is all those little neurons are actually formulating a pathway to create that action you're thinking about. While you're thinking, your body isn't disconnected, it's just there waiting for, it's actively participating in your thoughts. It is. It's and it, like in the book, he says, if you try to stop and think about each individual move that you make, you're very awkward. If you're a martial artist guy, you're not going to make it. If you're a musician, you're not going to be able to play the complicated music if you try to stop and think about every little move you're doing. So what does he say to do in this chapter? What does he say to do instead? What do you got to do? If I can't really, like, list them all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. What has to happen first? Mm-hmm.
Think about the outcome.
You have to visualize it. Visualize it. On page 283. It's called an engram. Engrams encode not only the things I do repeatedly, they also encode the manner in which I do them and my style of doing them. This one guy, Dr. Sachs, in here, he'd been injured, right? And they had to reconstruct his leg, poor guy. And they kept trying to get him where he could walk. And the neurosurgeon says, everything is okay. We hooked it back up. It's working. And he still couldn't walk. He couldn't coordinate himself to do it. Because he was trying to think, well, now I hit my hip and I do this. And his brain really couldn't follow that. But when he went back and he was going to act like a child, be like a childlike, and he just thought about, well, I'm going to walk, I'm going to move my hip, the muscles knew what to do. He got in the way of that movement. All he had to do was picture it, visualize it, put his mind there, and his body followed. So we have to do that in massage. You won't be any good, you won't have any rhythm or any flow if you have to stop and think about every move you make. It slows you down way too much, okay? So as you're learning, you're incorporating all this into your mind, but where you want to get is what we call in the zone. If you're a runner, whoever else, because it's kind of like a form of self-hypnosis. You're there like on autopilot, but you're aware of everything, and you're letting your body do the work. So your intuition, that's what you want to work from. What chakra is that?
Third eye.
On the brow, right, from the third eye. That inner vision, I see it in my mind, and my body's going to do it. When I'm working, I visualize, if I'm using pressure, that I'm going all the way through the person to the ground, to the floor. That's my visualization. All the way to the floor. And I don't think about anything else. That's just that, okay? So it has to come through your fingers and your eyes, because you do observe, okay? And then how do you integrate that into what you're going to do? And you can't think it. You'll think it to death and it won't work. There has to be this engram. The word is engram. See, it's in there on 282, the top. Learned movement can be trained to function very much like a reflex. I don't have to think about it anymore. I don't. One thing that's going to help you develop all of this stuff is, hopefully nobody can see you, but you need to get down and crawl on all fours. You need to crawl around, because when you crawl around, you coordinate the right and left half of your brain, and your right and left hand now are going to work together as a team, even if the left hand is leading. You need to cross the body. We were doing this, right? That's crossing the body. That's good. That's good. Anything you do like that, that's good. Twisting yourself up like we did. But crawling is a whole different thing. And it really is a good thing to do. Now, you're learning a new skill that's going to take your entire body to be coordinated, and your left side as well as your right. So you need to cross that in the brain so both halves are working together better. Okay? So a couple of things you should do every day before you work is do some cross-body stuff. Cross your legs, cross your hands, do this, right? You can do this on a board, a little figure 8 with each hand, just to get your brain woken up and focusing. Now, what is the exercise that you should do as a massage therapist? Tai Chi. What should you do for your brain? Because you got to get your brain under control too. Meditate. He goes on and on and on about what meditation does and how good it is for you. If you're working in any kind of medical field, you need to be able to discuss this with someone on a medical level. Why should we ask them to meditate? Well, there's a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons. And it's that brain-mind. So whether or not it allows us to locate volition, okay, somewhere or somehow in the mind is formed the idea or the image or the feel of a movement. That idea, image, or feeling can act like an engram. It's like a reflex. It gets built into you. Built into you. Okay? You don't have to think about it anymore. And that's what we want to do. So you visualize your goal, which is what?
Reduce pain, increase range of motion.
That's for the outcome. But for you, performing the massage. What's the outcome you want from your performance? What do you want your body to be able to do? What kind of performance do you want to have? Well, I want to be smooth. I want to have rhythm. I want to have continuity. I want to have good control of my hands and the tissues that I'm working on, right? And on 284, I really like this. I'm probably going to misspell it. Bartniev. My interpretation of the concepts is that spatial intent begins in the mind as an image guiding the movement. The image has to guide the movement, okay? A martial artist, guys, he's standing there looking at a brick with all the, like 8 pieces of wood or something, and he's going to cut it in half with the side of his hand. What do you think he's visualizing? He's already done it. Exactly. He's already done it. His body already knows what to do to bring about the outcome that he wants. So he's not saying, I'm going to cut through that. I'm going to cut through that. I can do it. I know I can do it. No, he's saying, I just broke that brick and it's in 2 pieces. It's all the way in 2 pieces. And that's what you need to do. That's how you learn how to do this really, really good. And that's what we want you to do. But this is telling you all about that. How do you get that rhythm that you need? Okay? And you and I can be kind of vague about it, but we need to understand the actual physical reason for why this works. Why does it work? What's happening inside when I do this? So do you have volition? What does that word mean? I have volition. That's a pretty simple word. You should already know that. You use that a lot in your daily life. Volition means I control it with my mind. I think about it and I can do it. My mind says, it's a thought that I can do it. I can do it. Now, so you've got two things going on in your body. Well, you got three types of muscle tissue. You got cardiac, you have skeletal, and you have visceral. The skeletal is what we work on, right? That's connecting everything together. But the visceral is also important because that controls blood pressure, blood flow, all the things happening in the digestive system. And I want all that to change too, don't I? Yep. I want to bring that under control and normalize all of those rhythms. And, I don't want them to get another ulcer. Keep all that under control. And they thought that all of this had nothing to do with touch and all that kind of stuff until they researched it. And found out, yeah, you may think it's autonomic and you can't control it. But in here, they talked about controlling even how much acid the stomach will excrete. They trained rats to respond to all these different stimuli. And they got to where they could control different bodily functions that you would normally think was not under your control. But they are. And if a little rat can know to respond in a certain way, then you should be able to know too. So it is controlling everything, it is. And if it says autonomic, only up to a certain point. I can step in and do something about, even if it's autonomic, even if it's not autonomic. How does meditation do that? How does it do that? Anybody out here already use meditation? Meditate? And yoga, both. They're kind of like put together here. On page 293, he talks about both. That bottom paragraph, at the same time, an increase in blood flow to the muscles can be observed, stepping up their oxygenation, even though the breath and the heartbeat slowed down. So you're going to reduce the levels of lactate. Anybody know what lactate is? I'm sure you've heard of lactic acid, right? And they say that's what makes your muscles stiff and sore when you exercised. It's because you went past the capacity of the oxygen carrying properties of the muscles, and then they had to keep going, so they start burning sugar, which is anaerobic, and it's a byproduct of that type of combustion, that type of metabolism. Mm-hmm. No, the Krebs cycle is inside the cell. It's the mitochondria. That's how it makes the ATP. Yeah, it's whether it's aerobic or anaerobic. So that type of fuel, that type of energy that you get has a lot of waste products left over, and they're toxic. That lactic acid is not a good thing. And you know it's not a good thing because how do you feel when you got it in your muscles? It hurts, right? You feel stiff, and your body has to carry all that crap off. And you can control that more, right, through meditation too, even that. So what we want to do, so it's not physical, it's chemical too, okay? And it's not just your skeletal muscles, it's all those smooth muscles too. You can change all that. And what you want to do in the 294, the last paragraph above the heading for body work, it's referred to as a wakeful hypometabolic state. And where you want their brain waves are in something called alpha. So I don't want to keep asking them like every 5 minutes, are you okay? Is that pressure okay? You warm enough? Every 5 minutes? Don't do it. Kind of an autonomic, hypnotic state you put yourself in, right? And you want their brain waves to be in alpha. And on that page, what does he say about alpha brain waves? Why is that a good thing?
Heal the body.
It's going to put you in that wakeful, hypometabolic state. That's what it's going to do. I like to think of it as daydreaming. You're daydreaming, right? You're still aware of your surroundings, but you don't care. Now, one thing you have to understand, you don't want control of your mind. Don't think, well, I've got to clear my mind. I only have to see the color purple. And if I don't just clear my mind and see the color purple, then I'm not doing it right. That's not how it works. You're still going to have thoughts. They're going to fleetingly float by. But you're going to let them do that. You're going to let them float by. They won't go away, so please don't think you got to like have a blank slate and you're in your special place and all you hear is the brook. And no, your brain is still going to form thoughts. But what you want to do is not respond to them. Just let them pass on, pass them by. I'm not going to start worrying about that. That's gone. It's all right. Let it float by. Put them in a little balloon, a little wicker basket for a hot air balloon, and send them on their way. So the circularity of the internal feedback response system, and this is what you were talking about. We want to break that cycle. We want to break it. Interrupt it. Give them something else to think about. And change all of that, okay? So for body work, just as for meditation, the desired end result is an individual who is both relaxed and alert, in control. In control. And do you have to learn to be sick, or does your body learn to be sick? What did he say about learning to be sick? That's what we do. Our thoughts is what gives us the situation we're in, right? And if you can learn to be sick, you can also learn to be unsick, right? I like this example. What happens when you're always stressed out, when you let stress rule your life? And in our world today, we're not being chased by lions anymore. It's not our life on the line, it's our ego. It's our ego. But your body doesn't know that this isn't the same as a lion. It's going to respond to anything that you feel is stressful as though your life is on the line, right? So all these changes happen. Your digestive system pretty much stops because you don't want to have to go to the bathroom running from the lion, right? So people who are stressed out all the time, what kind of digestive system do they have? They've got ulcers, they got irritable bowel syndrome, right? Because we're trying to eat and live a normal life with a digestive system that's shut down. It's shut off. It's not working. And all these other changes. And a big change happens to your blood, all right? Like he said, heart attacks. How about atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries? That's epidemic now, right? It's epidemic. Because when you're stressed out, the chemicals that your brain tells your body to make are not ones you want running through your system day in and day out. They're corrosive. They're like battery acid. Their job was to get you in and out of a crisis. And we create our own crisis now. I don't like him. He doesn't like me. That person cut me off on the highway. You know, it's all about my ego. It's all about my ego. And you know what you are? You're a stress addict. Stress addicts, they'll try to reduce their stress by taking a class, and then they're all stressed out about the class. Because if you have an addiction to anything else, is it good for you? That addiction, whatever it is, but you still do it. You know it's not good for you, but you're hooked, right? Well, you can get hooked on all that nasty chemical stuff. Your body kind of gets used to it. And when it goes away a little bit, it's kind of a bad feeling at first, right? So our whole life is built around that, built around the stress. And you become addicted to it. It's like you watch really violent movies all the time, and then you see this nice, soft little love story. You know, I'm an American. Where's the violence? So that's what's happening inside stress. Now, there are two kinds of stress. He didn't name them in here, but he talks about there's two kinds. You need stress in your life. They did an experiment where they took a group of rats, and this one, there was no stress in their life, but there was no stimulation either. Pretty bland. Then they took some that they stressed the hell out of them, right? If they gave them no way to alleviate the stress, they couldn't run away. They were stressed. And then the middle group, they stimulated them, but they gave them options and ways out of the stressful situation. Which of those three groups do you think was the healthiest? The critical thinkers. The guys who had it easy, they were like hothouse plants. They couldn't withstand anything. And the other guys, they're so short-circuited, their wiring, they can't respond in a normal way to anything because they've blown their fuses, right? So you need stress, you do. But it has to be good stress. So we have something called eustress. Now, what you normally feel is distress, right? So this is the bad one. This is the bad one. This is the good one. Don't you get excited? Oh, I'm going to go on vacation. It's next week. I'm going to get to go away. Yay! It's my birthday. It's my birthday. You think a boxer who does not get himself psyched up before he goes into the ring is going to win? He wants to have stress, right? He wants to be on his toes and aware and doing the best he can. And that takes stress. It takes those hormones to have that in your body. But not this one. Not the distress. Because this is toxic. This will kill you. This will kill you. This is what you want. And you want to have a way to deal with it. So that's what meditation does. It gives you a way to deal with it. That's what body work does. I can't counsel you like a psychologist, but if you have a lot of stress and a lot of problems in your life, and I change the chemistry of your body, and I relax those muscles, and I take all that tension out, what happened to your attitude? Are you still totally distressed completely? No, because you're able to change your thoughts. Once the body's gotten there, the mind can go there. They kind of go together, right? They kind of go together. So I can't say I'm a therapist and I'm helping you with your emotional problems. I can't say that, but what's going to be the result of my body work? You can deal with your emotional problems a lot better now, right? A lot better. I really believe every single person who has to go in for therapy, they should get a massage before they have to go sit in there with their shrink. You're able to be open more, right? You're not guarded and in denial. And when they make suggestion, it's like, well, that's not going to work. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You'll actually be receptive. Because most crazy people, and I'm one of them, it's always their fault. You know, it's never my fault. The doctor doesn't know what he's doing. It's always, and I'm not listening. I'm not, because my little wall's up. I have a defense mechanism, and it's really hard to change. It's really hard to change. And it's hard to not be a stress addict once you become one. You can even take a trip into the woods where you're supposed to relax into this big, horrible challenge of the right equipment, and you'll turn it into something stressful. You will. And you'll have to overcome your addiction, just like if you drank too much or if you did drugs too much. You have to overcome it. And it doesn't take a lot of time. I kind of, when I'm standing outside of the room before I go in there, I take at least 10 seconds to calm my mind, kind of focus on meditation, maybe do stretching while I'm doing it, right? Getting my body ready, but you got to get your mind ready too. And then afterwards, you got to dump whatever you just went through, clear it out, clear it out. Wash your hands in cold water, do something, clear it out. We have to be grounded. You have to be grounded. What does that mean? Why do I have to be grounded if I'm a therapist? Well, what does that mean to electricity? What'd you say?
Neutral.
No, what is a ground wire for in an electrical thing? Electrical, because we're talking about electricity. Exactly. It lets the current pass through and off you and into the ground, right? So you don't get shocked. Well, you have to do this to yourself when you're working on someone. You have to let all that pass through you and not affect you, not take your energy away. Especially if it's someone who's negative. I call them vampires. They'll suck the life right out of you. They're so miserable, right? And I'm working on them. Well, I don't want to end up being as miserable as they are after the massage. So I'm going to be grounded. It's not going to stay with me. It's going to go right through. I'm a clear channel, and I want to keep that channel open. So I don't take it on. I don't take it on. And that's another form of meditation, to do that. To be in that state, right? It's a form of meditation. So we can change things, how we react to things, either habituation or sensitization. What do those two terms mean? That's 298 and 99. What's he talking about there? We have to process information. We have to be selective, awareness, your memory, your habits, your associations, okay? And all of that, remember, everything is a chemical reaction. Every thought you have, your body makes a chemical reaction to that thought. You can't have tons of adrenaline flowing through your system if your mind is in a happy place. They don't go together. They don't go together. But you can do something. You can have habituation. When you get dressed in the morning, you put your shirt on, you feel it, but you walk around, do you feel it now? I mean, you're aware it's there, but you're not focusing on it, right? So if you habituate yourself to something, that means you've gotten used to it. And sometimes that's not a good thing, right? We shouldn't get used to that. We should pay more attention to it, but we don't. We get into those old habits, and there you go. Or we're too sensitive. We're too sensitive. Something has caused us to overreact, right? We're not ignoring it now. We're overreacting to it. And you as a therapist, that's kind of bad to do, either ignore it or overreact to it. It's really hard. Not a good idea. So we have to not do that. And he tells you why and how it happens in here with the chemicals, what chemicals they are, where they go. But like I said, that's nervous system stuff and endocrine. Just get the overview of what this chapter is telling you about. Do you know that the Chinese word for crisis has 2 brush strokes to it? Some of you may have already heard this. So crisis has 2 brush strokes that it uses for that word, to make that word. One brush stroke is for danger, and the other brush stroke is for opportunity. Have you heard that? There's always an opportunity to find in that, because that's my attitude. I got that attitude. There's got to be something I can get out of this. This is a teachable moment, whatever the hell that phrase is these days, right? I screwed up, but I can learn something from it. So in a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity. Recognize it. Otherwise, you're going to be crushed, and you can't be crushed. So do I have to kind of like treat myself as though I'm on a journey now that I've become a massage therapist? It's not just for the client. I mean, this is good for you too. It's a very spiritual journey you're on. Take your first steps. Clear your mind of all that stuff, all those little things you're carrying through with you. Now, one thing I do want to point out, everybody talks about stress and it's the fight or flight response. Well, there's another one. Some of us freeze, don't we? We just can't move forward. We just can't. I should run away, but I don't. So it's fight, flight, and freeze. So there's 3 ways you respond to stress. And you wonder how some person could be stuck in that rut for 20 years. It's because that is their response to stress, is to freeze. And what is the hormone that's the chemistry of stress? What's the main one? 309. Cortisone and adrenaline. Everybody get cortisone shots these days? Don't they try to get you to do a cortisone shot? Anything goes wrong, you got joint problems, they try to shoot up that joint, right? Not a good idea. Not a good idea. At first it was, but now that they know more about what's happening inside the body, it's not a good idea. Cortisone breaks down proteins. It breaks them down. And what's the main thing that you're made of? And how did they get that in your body? They injected it, but where did it go? Into your bloodstream, right? Or they give you a drug. Where does it go? Everywhere. Not just the place where you got the problem. It's okay here, but what about all that cortisol in my brain or in my other hip or whatever? It's destroying them. It's destroying them. And to me, the pain of the needle going in, that is worse than anything else. So they say, well, this will make it get better faster. You'll feel better tomorrow. No, I'll still be in agony from the shot you gave me the day before. So what did I gain? No lot, not a whole lot, right? Not a whole lot. So, and like he says, the purely symptomatic action, all it does is make you feel better. It doesn't help the problem at all, right? Coupled with the severe consequences of the sustained protein breakdown generated by sustained dosages have proved to be very dangerous side effects. And people aren't as enthusiastic about it anymore as the way they were. So this is a nice little picture, but you don't have to learn all that now. Just know that this is where they all come from. The hypothalamus creates the thought pattern, and then the chemicals are formed, and this little gland right here kind of governs all that. And we're going to learn it like a pizza. So we'll know all the hormones. There's 9 slices to your pituitary pizza. So when you learn it, you got to come up with 9 answers to get all the hormones there. He doesn't list the posterior pituitary hormones for some reason, but there are 2. There is antidiuretic hormone, so that keeps you from being incontinent. And who's ever heard of oxytocin? Who's heard of this? Not Oxycontin. Yeah, don't give yourself away there. This is called the feel-good hormone, okay? When it's the bonding hormone between moms and babies, that bonding hormone, it makes you want to be sociable. It also is related in childbirth. When the uterus makes a contraction, this hormone is released, and it just makes them stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. But it's the thing that makes you like someone and bond with them. It's that oxytocin. So people who have low levels of this are sociopaths. They don't see that there's any bonding at all with you. You're an object to them, right? You're an object. But all this is going to make that chemical change inside you be what it is, okay? And that's the pituitary adrenal complex. And we're gonna interrupt these vicious cycles, aren't we?
Yes.
3:16. We're going to break apart that pain cycle, and we're going to change all of that stress addiction that poor person is going under. We're going to rid the lactic acid that's built up in the tissues, and that goes with anxiety for some reason. So it just makes you anxious to have all that stuff in your body. And what kind of touch do we offer the public? Safe touch, absolutely safe touch. You do kind of need to know the part on pain that, first of all, pain is a very subjective experience. It's your idea of pain is not my idea of pain. I could probably tolerate things you can't, and you may be able to tolerate things I can't. So pain is very, very subjective. So what do? We work within their pain tolerance. Because if you go past that, what is their body going to do as a response? Tighten up. So go ahead, push and poke all you want, but you're going to get the opposite effect to what you're doing it for. They've got to take a deep breath and exhale and breathe into the pain or the discomfort and not fight it. And hopefully with time they'll change, right? You know, some things now bother me that never did before, and things I've learned to cope with over time, and now it's okay. I'm not that stressed. I used to be deathly afraid of needles and that kind of stuff. The pain of the the fear was much worse than the actual shot, but you know, you practically had to hold me down because it's just that pain in the skin for some reason I thought was horrible. Now after being sick and all the things I've had to go to, it's, you know, how many quarts you want today? I don't really care. But I had to desensitize myself, didn't I? I had to desensitize myself. So that's what our clients have to do and we have to do. All right, a little story about what happens when you're under all this stress. The first thing that your body does is change what? Your chemistry. That's what gets changed. And when that's changed, everything else is going to change. What happens in your veins, in your arteries, who knows what happens when you're stressed out all the time? In the artery itself. They harden. They harden and plaque builds up. That's two different things that are going on. The plaque builds up. Now, if you didn't have sticky platelets to give that those fats somewhere to stick to, they wouldn't stick to you. You've changed the consistency of your blood being stressed out all the time. Because when you're stressed out, your body thinks, well, you know, any minute now you could get bit or get cut, and you're going to start profusely bleeding, and I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to make sure your blood is ready to clot just like that. Right? So my blood's changed. My platelets are sticky. They're going to stick to that opening and try to close it as fast as they can. So my blood's not flowing right. Not flowing right at all. And those little HDLs and LDLs, the little molecules, the proteins with fats, they're sticking to this stuff now. And once they stick, other things flowing around stick to that, and before you know it, your artery is like that, right? It's like that. So can we get control of something like that? Do we have control of our stress? Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah, we do. We have control of that. This guy was divorced, okay? And he had to work really late hours, and he didn't get to see his kids that much, and he really wanted to see them. So he planned a dinner. They were going to come to his house, and he was going to make dinner for the kids. But he's working, and then he gets a call, and his boss says, well, you have to stay for about 10 more minutes because you've got to get this done before you leave. All right, he looks at the clock, dinner 5:30, he can get to the store, everything's okay, he can do that. But it took him twice as long as he thought it was going to take him. So did he stay calm and cool for that twice as long as he thought period? No. He's worried, I'm going to let my kids down again, right? My ex-wife's probably going to be mad at me. I need to get to the store. So he starts off planning this big elaborate meal with all this cook time, and he's down to where, you know, hot dogs are good enough, I can grab it in the store and run, at least we can be eating together. So he gets to the grocery store, and he only has like 5-10 minutes to go. Grabs his stuff, and he's standing in line, in the 10 items line, right? He just gotta, and he's behind this little old lady who's arguing with the clerk over the beans were 3 for $1. And that should count as one item, and I shouldn't leave the line and go over there, wait on me, right? And he's trying to be polite, and the lady's arguing with him, and the poor guy behind him, he says, I can't even do this now. They're supposed to be there now. They're supposed to be at my house right this minute, and I'm not even there. He keels over with a heart attack, and he dies. What's the moral of the story? You can't afford sticky platelets.
On that for years.
We have a couple of things to go over from the theory book, but we could probably do it downstairs if that's okay. We could come up here, but just talk a little bit about the book, the theory book, those chapters. It's stuff you've been doing all along, you know, how to get on and off the table and all that kind of stuff. But, if you want to wear your own underwear, that's perfectly okay. I'd prefer you have your little thongs on tomorrow, but that's all right. And tell me what an effleurage is.
Light touch, stroking.
Gliding. I'm gliding along, gliding along. What is petrissage? What's a good description? Petrissage. Kneading, squeezing, wringing, right? How about friction? You're moving what's under the skin. So I'm holding it still and I'm moving what's under there. That's friction. How about vibration? I can do it a couple of different ways, but it's vibration. That's one of those. You never answer the simple questions. You sit there and try to complicate the hell out of it. It's vibration. But I can do it different ways. If I do it up and down, what is that called? Up and down. Jostling. If I do it side to side, shaking. I can make the whole body rock, right? I can do it sideways, which would be horizontal. I can do it up and down, which would be vertical. And what does tapema mean? Tapotment. Tapema.
To beat.
Hitting. Striking. What we would say is percussion, right? So anything that I strike you, that's that. That's that. And then in the beginning or at the end, I just do this. Touch with intent. Resting hand position. Resting hand position. And then range of motion. Range of motion. If it's active, who's doing the work? They are. If it's passive, I am. If I ask them to flex and I try to push the arm back down, active resisted. The best way to do it. And what if I ask them to do it and I just kind of help them because they're kind of weak? Active assisted. That's it. And you have to be good at that, okay? You have to know what you're talking about and you have to be good at it. And the first thing you have to learn with the oil is how much to use. You know, most people you're a French fry and you don't really need to use that much because you can't get a grip. You want to be able to grip that tissue, so knowing how much to use is real important. Real important.